3 days after I finished my college entrance exam, what I inherited was not a multi-billion-dollar corporation, but a pile of debts worth billions. My mother went missing, the Jiang Group's stock price plummeted, and all the shareholders were waiting to divide up my family fortune. They mocked me, saying I was just a high school graduate and had no right to control the Jiang family. But they didn't know the secret I'd hidden for 18 years was enough to bring the near-bankrupt group back to its peak. And it all started the day the college entrance exams ended. Part 2. Half a month later, I stepped out of the country for the first time and arrived at an island in Southeast Asia. Accompanying me were Nye Gang and the first batch of selected personnel. The island before me was no longer desolate. 3 months of frantic construction have brought the island's infrastructure to a basic level, progressing faster than I had originally anticipated. The most striking feature is the HC Investment Group headquarters building in the center of the island. The main headquarters building has 9 floors, with a 3-story annex on each side. The 8th and 9th floors have been separated and become my private area, where no one is allowed to enter without permission. The 8th floor is the office area for the Super Secretary team, which houses hundreds of elites from various fields. With a large amount of work being handled by them, the pressure on me will be greatly reduced. The 9th floor is where I truly belong. The east side is the office area, a large office of 400 or 500 square meters, simply decorated yet substantial. Outside the office door is Fu Ning's private office. The west side is the private living area, complete with bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen. It's like a super large single-level apartment. After all, I'll be staying on the island for a long time, so being comfortable will help me think more clearly. The 7th floor of the building houses the group's senior management offices and meeting rooms. The 6th floor is for the security department. The 2nd to 5th floors are general office areas, and the 1st floor includes a coffee shop, restaurant, gym, and swimming pool. The East Annex was assigned to the security department for routine training and could be converted into a combat command center when necessary. The West Annex was assigned to the Research and Development Department, which specialized in researching weapons and equipment to enhance the island's self-defense capabilities. Not far from the headquarters, the island's only comprehensive hospital was built, equipped with world-class medical equipment. Residential areas are planned in the southwest, forming a triangular distribution with the headquarters and hospital. The first phase, consisting of fewer than 20 residential buildings, has been completed and can accommodate 2,000 families. The buildings are simply furnished and equipped with appliances, making them ready for immediate occupancy. Construction on the second phase will begin within a month. In the mountainous and hilly areas of the western part of the island, waterworks, power plants, and waste treatment plants are all in operation. Resources are scarce here, so they can only rely on wind, solar, and hydropower to extract every usable resource. A medium-sized seaport was also built in the north, and all supplies to the island are transported by sea. It can be said that this port is the lifeblood of the island. Only by protecting it can the island truly survive. As for the airport, I haven't had it built yet. Manpower is one issue, but more importantly, we lack air defense capabilities. Building an airport would just make us sitting ducks. I'll wait until I get armed helicopters. Soon, I took my seat in the main seat of the HC Investment Group conference room. Nye Gang, Xie Shuyun, the behind-the-scenes manager, Sheng Mingkai, from the RD department, Wang Ming, from the security department, and Tang Xing, from the finance department, sat down next to me in that order. I looked at them and said in a low voice, "We're all on the same side, so report your situation first." As soon as I said that, everyone sat up straight, because they all knew that a new chapter for the island was about to begin. Xie Shuyun was the first to report. Over the past 6 months, following my instructions, the group has increased its investment in the Golden Triangle region, controlling most of the legitimate industries there, which is equivalent to holding the economic lifeline of that region in its hands. After listening, I nodded and turned to Tang Xing. "How is the group's financial situation now?" Tang Xing is in his 30s or 40s and has strong financial skills. He is someone I specifically picked out. Tang Xing replied in a deep voice, "Chairman Jiang, the group's current total market value is 1.6 trillion yuan, fixed assets are 1.4 trillion yuan, and working capital is 200 billion yuan. The estimated annual net profit is around 250 billion yuan. This return is already quite substantial, but what I'm really concerned about isn't the numbers on paper. I stared at him and continued. If it doesn't affect normal operations, how much can be used? And what's the maximum you can raise? The meeting room fell silent instantly. There was a deeper meaning behind this question. If Tang Xing was smart enough, he would understand that I wasn't asking for an ordinary answer. Tang Xing remained silent for a long time before slowly speaking. Chairman Jiang, without affecting the group's operations, we can probably mobilize 130 billion yuan. If you urgently need money, I can raise 300 billion yuan in a short time. Everyone in the conference room, except me, gasped. The account only had 200 billion, yet he claimed he could raise 300 billion. Where would they find the extra 100 billion to cover? I looked at him, intrigued. Tell me your thoughts. Tang Xing replied respectfully. The group controls most of the Golden Triangle's industries. Everyone knows HC Investment Group. Whenever they issue bonds, there will definitely be people scrambling to buy them. I shook my head and stared into his eyes. This method is feasible, but I want to hear your true thoughts. Tang Xing's expression changed, clearly not expecting that I had seen through his backup plan. All eyes turned to Tang Xing. After a moment, he let out a heavy breath, a glint of light flashing in his eyes. Yes, Chairman Jiang, I actually have another way. He paused, then lowered his voice slightly. It's just that this method is a bit underhanded. Shortcut, I murmured. Tang Xing, however, bluntly stated, short the Japanese stock market again. The conference room fell silent instantly, and everyone held their breath. The last time Star Capital Group intervened, it drove the Japanese stock index to a low point. Several major conglomerates desperately tried to prop up the market, barely managing to stabilize the situation. It's still a long way off before it recovers to its peak. After Tang Xing finished explaining the plan, Wang Ming silently moved his chair to the side. This method wasn't just malicious. It was utterly wicked, specifically targeting the Japanese soldiers' most vulnerable points. Japanese stock market investors have just regained some confidence. If we dump our stocks again, the entire market will likely plummet back into the abyss. I might hesitate to harm others, but harming Japan? I just want to laugh. I looked at Tang Xing and said in a deep voice, do it your way. This matter is yours to handle. You can do whatever you want with us, but you must hide us well and not let the other side find out. We currently lack the resources to directly confront a national-level power. If Japan were to send warships in a desperate move, we wouldn't be able to withstand it with our current strength. Tang Xing nodded immediately, his eyes brimming with excitement. He had studied every move I made in the stock market back then, and he knew that the rise of the Jiang Group was inseparable from those few periods of frenzied profit-taking. During his years at Telenkio, he was never idle. He studied stock market cases every day and analyzed my trading rhythm. The more he studied, the more shocked he became, because there were many points at which even the major players didn't expect me to dare to enter the market. Now that the opportunity was before him, he wanted to prove himself to me. I looked directly at Xie Shuyun and said, mobilize all available resources to fully support Tang Xing. Tang Xing's expression visibly changed upon hearing this. It was a mixture of trust and pressure. He immediately assured him, Chairman Jiang, rest assured, I will definitely handle this matter properly. I nodded and immediately moved on to the next topic, my gaze falling on Wang Ming. How many people are there in the security department now? Wang Ming stood up and saluted, his voice straight. Chairman Jiang, the group's security department currently has 137 people, all of whom are retired soldiers. After half a month of training, their physical condition is close to its peak. I'm very satisfied. This group was the first to arrive on the island, and they're not the same group that Nie Gang selected. They were first transferred to HC Investment Group, and then came to the island with the headquarters. These individuals have all undergone vetting and signed the highest level of confidentiality agreements. Now that the island is in our hands, ordinary security measures are insufficient. I announced in a deep voice, reorganize the group's security department. Nie Gang brought 172 people this time, plus the existing personnel, for a total of 301 people. Based on the security department, a defense force for the island will be established. It will be divided into 3 companies, each with 90 people, and 3 squads, each with 30 people. The squad is the basic combat unit. The remaining 31 men were organized into a reserve force, responsible for guarding the building and daily patrols of the island. Nie Gang was appointed as the battalion commander, in charge of all military training. Wang Ming was appointed as the deputy battalion commander, assisting in the work. Nie Gang and Wang Ming stood up simultaneously and gave me a standard military salute. At that moment, the atmosphere in the conference room changed. It was no longer just the group headquarters, but more like a fortress about to awaken. I continued to give the order: distribute all weapons to the brothers, intensify training, and get back to peak condition as soon as possible. Nie Gang responded loudly, his eyes burning with the fire of a soldier once again. Then, I looked around at everyone and said, "Now that we are the de facto owners of this island, it must have a name. In the future, we must raise our own banner." Wang Ming was the first to speak. "How about calling it Dragon Island?" Tang Xing immediately shook his head. The word dragon was too easy for people to associate with China, and it would drag the country into a vortex of public opinion. Xie Shuyan then suggested calling it Star Island. Tang Xing still objected, saying that the name Star Island was too closely associated with the Jiang Group, and if they were targeted, his previous plan to fade out of the Jiang Group would be disrupted. None of their suggestions were suitable, and Tang Xing himself couldn't think of a name, so he could only look at me. I remained silent for a moment, and suddenly a night illuminated by starlight flashed through my mind. I said slowly, "The night sky is dotted with stars, and wherever our eyes look, we see China. The land shrouded by stars is also the land we will conquer in the future. But we are destined to hide in the darkness, to be lone warriors traversing the night. That's why this island is called Night Sky Island." The group murmured the name repeatedly, then nodded in agreement. Night Sky Island was thus decided. The island's defense force was officially named the Dark Knight Army, with me as its commander-in-chief, temporarily organized into the 1st Battalion. Starting today, HC Investment Group will take the lead, with Zhang's group playing a supporting role to support the Dark Knight Army and build Night Sky Island. I believe that soon, Night Sky Island and the Dark Knight Army will cause headaches for the world's superpowers, especially the self-proclaimed hegemon, the United States. Today's Night Sky Island is no longer the desolate and deserted island it was just 6 months ago. Standing on high ground and looking down, I saw ports, roads, factories, and residential areas stretching out one after another. What used to be a desolate place has been transformed into the prototype of a new city by us. Xie Shuyan invested a total of 100 billion yuan in this island. The contractor is Xingchen Real Estate, which is managed by Xingchen Investment Group. The money still goes around in circles and profits are made by their own people. The benefits don't go to outsiders. With 100 billion invested, the results are quite astonishing. In less than 6 months, the changes on Night Sky Island have become too great to hide. The real problem isn't the development itself, but the outside world's eyes. I originally wanted to keep a low profile, and even HC Investment Group tried to minimize its exposure. But the more you try to hide something, the more likely it is to be targeted. Soon, someone posted a set of photos on an international forum, showing a comparison of Night Sky Island before and after its development. Those images were like a pebble thrown into the lake, instantly creating huge waves. Foreign netizens are going crazy. Some exclaimed that this is the same island in Southeast Asia that was photographed and taken away, while others marveled at the terrifying speed of China's infrastructure development, which transformed a deserted island into this in just 6 months. More people are starting to speculate about what HC Investment Group is really up to. Some say they want to build a resort island, while others are eyeing the port, saying its scale doesn't look like that of a typical civilian facility. Some people even tried to investigate the background of HC Investment Group, only to find that the boss seemed to be from the United States. All other information was blank. The less information they could find, the more mysterious it seemed. When the news reached China, it exploded on major short video platforms. Someone even copied the photos from overseas, and within 24 hours, the topic had become the #1 trending topic across the entire internet. The worst off was a male singer who just spent money to buy a spot on the trending topics list for his new album, only to have it pushed down by Night Sky Island within 5 minutes. He probably questioned his existence in the bathroom right then and there. Netizens quickly focused their attention on Xingchen real estate. Transforming a deserted island in less than 6 months, this infrastructure efficiency was considered outrageous by many, and it made Xingchen real estate famous overnight. But some people sensed something was amiss. HC Investment Group had taken over all of Zhang's group's overseas assets and then handed over Night Sky Island to Xingchen Real Estate for construction. This relationship seemed too much like that of close associates. Some even dissected the letters HC, suggesting that H might represent China and C might represent the constellation Chun, together forming the Chinese character for Huaxia Xingchen. This speculation caused a brief moment of silence in the comments section. However, public opinion was quickly redirected back to the island itself. Some emphasized that HC's boss is American and that his cooperation with the Jiang Group is merely a collaboration, urging people not to make malicious assumptions. I know someone is secretly controlling things. Very few people actually know the inside story. They've all signed lifetime confidentiality agreements. Anyone who dares to speak out will likely spend the rest of their life in jail. In the office on Night Sky Island, Fu Ning reported the public opinion situation to me. After listening, I simply waved my hand and whispered that we didn't need to worry about it for the time being. Since the island will be exposed sooner or later anyway, there's no need to waste all our energy on hiding it. What we really need to do is let the outside world see what we want them to see. I instructed Fu Ning to inform Xie Shuyan to immediately prepare for the development of the southern coast, starting with establishing the framework of a tourist resort area. The progress can be slowed down, but the overall appearance must be presented as soon as possible. This way, outside attention will be drawn to the resort projects, allowing the true purpose of the port and core area to remain more hidden. Then I asked Sheng Mingkai to come over. Not long after, he pushed the door open, closed the glass door, and stood respectfully in front of me, waiting for me to speak. I asked him to sit down and asked him directly if there was any way to block external electronic surveillance, such as aerial photography and satellite reconnaissance, and whether it was possible to prevent it. Sheng Mingkai answered quickly, saying that electronic jamming signals could be used to block satellite communications and data transmission, and that decoys could be released to confuse satellites. In addition, key facilities can be camouflaged using camouflage nets, camouflage paint, and terrain concealment to reduce the risk of exposure. As for anti-satellite weapons, that is a last resort. He made it very clear that, given our current situation, it is most appropriate to deploy high-power electronic jamming devices first, and anti-satellite weapons should not be used lightly for the time being unless we have sufficient strength. The RD Center had already made preparations. An electronic jamming device had entered its final stage and was expected to be put into use in 2 weeks. It would be deployed in key areas and could release interference directly to the outside world when necessary. Looking at Sheng Mingkai, I knew very well that the future of Night Sky Island could no longer be determined by money and infrastructure alone. I told him that I had only one request. I would pay whatever it cost. Conventional weapons must be developed and mass-produced as soon as possible, and high-tech weapons and strategic weapons should also be put on the agenda. Only by possessing power strong enough to intimidate everyone can Night Sky Island truly gain a foothold. Sheng Mingkai nodded solemnly, promising to do his utmost to develop weapons to protect Night Sky Island. After he left, I glanced at the time, then picked up my phone and dialed a number. The Star Academy of Sciences is holding a project promotion meeting. Although I am not personally presiding over this meeting, it is proceeding entirely according to my instructions. Jiang Pan sat in the main seat, and Bai Ryu was also present. All project leaders attended the meeting, and the atmosphere was oppressive from the very beginning. Jiang Pan got straight to the point, saying that the group had made a decision to re-examine existing research projects, temporarily suspending some and retaining only the most essential ones at present. These words immediately sparked a murmur of discussion in the conference room. Every project approved by the Star Academy of Sciences is a success. Each one represents a tremendous investment of effort. But I know very well that time waits for no one. There are more important things to do now, and some research has to be put on hold until the situation stabilizes. Jiang Pan calmed everyone down and told them that the project was not suspended because of failure or insufficient value, but because of a strategic adjustment by the group, which required prioritizing the overall interests. He ordered all materials to be sealed and stored, and the transferred team members would be assigned to new RD teams according to their professional specializations to continue undertaking more urgent tasks. Then, Bai Ryu took the microphone. Looking at the leaders below the stage, she said in a deep voice that the original intention of the Academy of Sciences was to develop technologies that would benefit mankind. She also admitted that suspending some projects was unfair to everyone. However, the situation was already pressing, and Xingqian Group could no longer proceed at its original pace. Everyone here has signed a confidentiality agreement and knows that I've visited the Chinese Academy of Sciences before and held a small meeting. Now, the project list has finally been finalized. Bai Ryu took out the list of projects that had been suspended and said in a softer voice that these projects were only temporarily halted and that the group would prioritize restarting them once this current crisis was over. She immediately assured them that Xingqian Talent Group would give priority to providing them with funds, equipment, and personnel, ensuring that their hard work would not be in vain. Applause erupted in the meeting room, but I knew it wasn't light-hearted applause. Those projects were like children they had raised themselves, and now they were suddenly forced to abandon them. No one felt good about it. But they also understand that what I'm pushing for is not just about the group's interests, but also about the overall situation of the country and the nation. Personal grievances can be put aside, and scientific research dreams can be temporarily suppressed, but at critical moments, all forces must be directed in one direction. Jiang Pan continued to announce new project divisions. The first group, the Rifle Research and Development Team, will prioritize the design of automatic rifles that are reliable, durable, and suitable for complex environments. The second group, the Pistol Development Team, is responsible for close-range self-defense weapons. The third group, the Sniper Rifle Development Team, continues the Starry Sky style. Accuracy can have errors, but the kill radius must cover those errors. The fourth group, the Armored Infantry Fighting Vehicle Research and Development Group, prioritizes the design of lightweight armored infantry fighting vehicles that must be adaptable to the terrain of Southeast Asia, capable of speed, defense, and combat. The fifth group, the Missile Development Team, prioritizes the design of air defense missiles and interception systems. We may not be able to achieve air superiority for the time being, but we must have the ability to defend ourselves. The sixth group, the Armed Helicopter and Fighter Jet Research and Development Team, will first develop armed helicopters to meet the needs of small-scale air combat and air-to-ground strikes. After reading the list, Jiang Pan reminded everyone again that all projects should enter a state of emergency immediately, and that time should be of the essence for data collection, solution verification, and prototype development. At the same time, the Academy of Sciences implemented military control, and no research information was allowed to be leaked. Anyone who dared to leak secrets would not only face severe legal punishment, but also a permanent ban from the Jiang Zemin faction. Bai Ryu finally added to my reward scheme. Any group that produces a qualified product will receive a reward of at least 500,000 yuan per person, plus an additional 500 million yuan in research funding. If someone achieves a technological breakthrough, the individual will receive a reward of at least 2 million. Once the technology is put into use, they will also receive technology usage fees and be exceptionally designated as a key talent for development. More importantly, the achiever will also receive a personal research grant of 200 million yuan. As soon as these words were spoken, the previously somber meeting room instantly became much more lively. I don't think scientists should only talk about ideals and not about money. They may not care about fame and fortune, but their parents, wives, and children should also have a better life. I offer high salaries, bonuses, and resources not to pressure people with money, but to ensure they are not held back by life and can devote themselves wholeheartedly to scientific research. As long as they don't sell their technology to foreign powers or engage in illegal or disorderly conduct, money is just a number to me. What I miss most are those years in high school, when I had several thousand yuan in living expenses every month, carefree, and without any worries. As soon as the project promotion meeting ended, Bai Ryu and Jiang Pan went into the office. She immediately made a decision. The group would allocate 20 billion yuan to the Academy of Sciences, and all military projects would be launched immediately, with results to be produced as soon as possible. I know very well that military research and development is a money-burning machine. Equipment costs tens or hundreds of millions of yuan. In the early stages, you need to buy instruments, and later you need to build production lines. 200 billion yuan sounds scary, but even if you really invest it, it will only be barely enough. Jiang Pan's biggest concern is where to locate the production line after the project succeeds. Building an arms factory in China would be troublesome due to approval procedures, confidentiality pressures, and external surveillance. Bairu didn't make a decision immediately because she needed to ask me about it. Just then, I called, and after Jiang Pan answered, I asked her directly about the progress of the military project. Jiang Pan reported that the project team had been formed and personnel would immediately begin research and development. The group and the Academy of Sciences would prioritize allocating resources to it. Hearing that Bai Ryu was also present, I asked him to turn on speakerphone. I immediately issued the following orders. First, to develop a standard automatic rifle suitable for all weather combat as soon as possible to equip the personnel on Night Sky Island. Second, to develop electronic jamming devices to shield Night Sky Island from external reconnaissance and monitoring. This electronic jamming device will allow them to communicate with Sheng Mingkai at the HC Investment Group's RD Center. Any research that is inconvenient to conduct in China can then be transferred to Night Sky Island. This isn't me being paranoid. It's just that reality is too dirty. For the past 2 years, the Jiang Group and the Star Academy of Sciences have been under constant surveillance. Last year alone, the military, national security, and police arrested more than 30 spies around the academy. Before the outside world fully notices Night Sky Island, I must hide this trump card in advance. By the time they realize what's happening, this island will no longer be a place they can easily investigate. I also instructed Bai Ryu and Jiang Pan to continue expanding talent recruitment and not to limit their focus to domestic companies. We can also poach capable people from abroad, but we must never let them touch core technologies. Their backgrounds must be thoroughly investigated. If any foreign researchers are suspected of being spies, they can also be sent to Night Sky Island. I have a million ways to make them work for me willingly. I've never believed in the idea that science knows no borders. Science may be borderless, but scientists do have borders. Those who enjoy the country's support, then turn around and develop technology for others, ultimately turning against their own people, are no different from traitors. Bai Ryu then asked me where to place the production line once the weapon was successfully developed. I pondered for a moment and gave the answer directly. Place it on Night Sky Island. Once Night Sky Island is fully developed and capable of self-defense, research experts can be sent there to continue their research on weapons and equipment. This approach ensures secrecy and keeps risks at bay. After hanging up the phone, I stared at the model of Night Sky Island, lost in thought. The location of the arsenal must be absolutely concealed, undetectable by external forces, and free from any interference. Soon, my finger landed on a mountain area on the sand table. The mountain was high and densely forested, with cliffs on 3 sides, at least 500 meters above the sea, and only a small path led up to it. To anyone else, it would look like a desolate, barren mountain. But it is precisely this kind of place that is most suitable for hiding an arms factory, and most suitable for becoming the true core of Night Sky Island. The only problem is the poor transportation. Large equipment simply cannot be transported up the mountain, so we must first build a road, specifically a winding mountain road that can accommodate heavy trucks. I immediately had someone contact Xingshan Real Estate to design and build a ring road around the island, tentatively a 2-lane road in each direction to connect all the facilities on the island. At the same time, I specified the location of that mountain and asked them to design an additional winding mountain road. On the surface, it was infrastructure construction, but the real purpose was to pave the way for a future arsenal. After arranging the road repairs, I asked Fu Ning to inform Xie Shuyun to implement it immediately, and also asked him to call Nie Gang over. Not long after, Nie Gang, dressed in military uniform, quickly arrived and gave me a standard military salute. I asked him how long it would take for the second batch of personnel from China to arrive. Gang reported that, according to the original plan, it would take another month, and the batch would consist of approximately 300 people. These people didn't come easily. Zhou first had to select bodyguards with good training results from Xingchen Security, and they also needed their consent and to sign confidentiality agreements before undergoing separate training. Meanwhile, the relevant military units will also investigate their backgrounds to ensure there are no issues. The entire process takes at least 2 months, and a slower pace is normal. I looked at Gang and lowered my voice. Night Sky Island will definitely recruit some foreign forces in the future, but you must become the backbone and serve as officers at various levels. No matter how large this force expands in the future, it must remain firmly under our control. Chapter 206 Returning to China. Standing in front of the sand table, I pointed to an area deep within Night Sky Island and immediately set the plan. An arms factory would be built here, designated a military restricted area, and a company would be stationed there to guard it. No one would be able to get even a step closer. I looked at Gang and lowered my voice. Once the second batch of personnel arrives, we'll select the elite from among them to form a special forces unit, and their base will be here as well. Gang immediately agreed, his eyes full of obedience. I then ordered him to send people to gather intelligence on the Golden Triangle, to ascertain the distribution of various forces, and to prepare for the next phase of operations. My expression was calm, but this step was already paving the way for future warfare. 2 weeks later, Tang Xing rushed to the top-floor office and immediately reported his achievements to me. He had used tens of billions of yuan as principal to roll over 250 billion yuan in the Japanese stock market, and had also evaded investigation by transferring funds through multiple accounts. Hearing this number, I was slightly taken aback. Without the system's support, Tang Xing was able to triple his initial investment on his own, a feat that surpasses the abilities of most financial geniuses. I immediately handed over the securities department to him, putting him in charge of both the finance and securities departments. However, I also reminded him that he should not enter the market on a large scale again, but should only operate slowly with small amounts of capital to avoid attracting attention from various parties. Tang Xing's eyes lit up with excitement, and his loyalty surged almost visibly. To him, his idol's approval was more valuable than money. He'd probably do it even if I asked him to short the U.S. stock market right now. At this point, HC Investment Group had nearly 400 billion in its accounts. I directly allocated 200 billion to the RD Center and invested another 100 billion in the infrastructure of Night Sky Island, and the basic structure of the logistics base was fully formed. Automobile manufacturing plants, armored vehicle manufacturing plants, aircraft manufacturing plants, and shipyards have all been approved. In the future, the Dark Knight Army will conquer the world, and Night Sky Island will need to provide weapons, ammunition, armored vehicles, aircraft, and warships. In just a few months, I invested nearly 1 trillion yuan in this island. Xingchen Real Estate's hundreds of thousands of construction workers worked day and night. Thousands of pieces of equipment roared simultaneously, and cargo ships docked at the port every day. The entire island was like a war machine. Half a year passed, and it was the end of 2027. I spent most of that year on Night Sky Island, witnessing it transform from a desolate island into a vast base with crisscrossing roads and well-developed facilities. The airport has been completed, and the automobile manufacturing plant has officially started production. Last week, the first military off-road vehicle rolled off the production line, using the Galaxy 001 production line and equipped with the ultimate super battery, boasting a pure electric range of over 3,000 kilometers. This vehicle weighs 2.5 tons and can accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in just 3.4 seconds. I named it Tiansu 01. It is named after Tiansu Star, one of the 36 heavenly stars, because speed is its sharpest blade. The RD Center and the Star Academy of Sciences have also unveiled a new achievement, an electronic jamming system called the Heavenly Prison. Once activated, the covered area is like being sealed in a heavenly prison, making it impossible for satellites and high-altitude reconnaissance equipment to see the truth. The second, third, and fourth batches of personnel successively landed on the island, bringing the total number to 1,109. The Dark Knight Army completed its expansion, with the Army, Navy, and Air Force in their initial stages, and a true private armed force began to take shape. The Army has 3 mechanized infantry battalions, as well as special operations squadrons, electronic jamming squadrons, and communications support teams, with a total strength of 1,145 personnel. The Navy currently only has Marines, and the Air Force is also just beginning to take shape. With the year drawing to a close, I've decided to return to China. I need to see my mother and Mu Wanbing, and I also must visit the Star Academy. Jiang Pan reported a couple of days ago that the research has yielded preliminary results, and I must see them for myself. There weren't many people going back with me this time. Only Fu Ning, Lin Dabiao, and 4 guards. Nie Gang stayed behind on Night Sky Island to oversee all military training. In case of any emergency, he could mobilize all the forces on the island. I first took a passenger ship to the port city, and then transferred to a private plane to fly to Kyoto. As soon as I landed, there were people waiting outside the airport. I didn't linger and left directly by car. My first stop was Kowloon Pavilion. Old Master Song wanted to see me. Lin Hai had already called before I left Night Sky Island. Now, my every move is being watched, and someone is secretly protecting my safety. After leaving Kowloon Pavilion, I headed straight for the Star Academy of Sciences. On the way, I called Mu Wanbing to tell her I was back. Her voice immediately became excited, and she said she would wait for me at the Purple Gold Villa. Hearing those words ignited a fire within me. During my time on Night Sky Island, I had been almost completely at peace, and after holding it in for so long, I was finally able to let it all out. At the Star Academy of Sciences, by Ryu, Jiang Pan, and the heads of various weapons projects were waiting in the conference room early. Everyone was staring at the time because I was here today to personally oversee the research and development progress. Half an hour ago, Fu Ning had contacted them to say that my convoy had already set off. Bairu didn't dare to delay and immediately took Jiang Pan to the office building entrance to greet them, while the other responsible persons continued to wait. Not long after, the bulletproof red flag state ceremonial vehicle slowly pulled up in front of the Academy of Sciences. The guards didn't check it and let it through directly. The bodyguards quickly dispersed to form a perimeter, and Fu Ning got out of the car to open the back door for me. As I got out of the car, Ryu and Jiang Pan immediately stepped forward and respectfully greeted me as Chairman Jiang. I nodded, and without exchanging pleasantries, led everyone directly into the conference room. In the conference room, all the project managers stood up in unison. I gestured for them to sit down and told them directly that we were there to hear about the project progress and to take a look at the new products. Jiang Panxian reported that the Academy of Sciences has now established 6 weapons project groups, namely automatic rifles, pistols, sniper rifles, armored infantry fighting vehicles, missiles, armed helicopters, and fighter jets. 3 of the firearms have completed development and will soon be tested at the firing range. The armored infantry fighting vehicle has also been initially completed and is awaiting experimental data for further adjustments. The missile project is more than halfway complete, and the first anti-aircraft missile is expected to be tested in 2 months. The armed helicopter and fighter jet projects are also largely complete, with the first armed helicopter expected to test fly in 3 months. After hearing this, I was somewhat surprised. This efficiency was much faster than I had expected, which also showed that these project teams were not just going through the motions, but truly treated scientific research as a battlefield. The first person in charge walked to the projector, where an automatic rifle appeared on the screen. He explained that this rifle was based on the fundamental concept of the AK-47, incorporating excellent rifle designs from both domestic and international sources, and was suitable for all-weather combat. It is 736 millimeters long, weighs 3.18 kilograms, has a 5.8 millimeters caliber, an effective range of 600 meters, and a magazine capacity of 35 rounds. Its appearance is clean and sleek, exuding a fierce aura. As I looked at the gun, I became more and more satisfied. It had the reliability of an AK, the compact style of domestically produced rifles, yet it had its own unique flavor. I named it Tiankue-1 on the spot, codenamed TK-1. taking the name of Tiankuei Star, the first of the 36 heavenly stars, to represent that it is the first automatic rifle in the Tiankuei series. I looked at the person in charge and told him that this name was not given casually. Since it was called Tiankuei, he had to live up to the position and develop more powerful firearms in the future. The person in charge immediately assured me that he would not let me down. Subsequently, the person in charge of the pistol project reported that the new pistol was 201 millimeters long, weighed 0.73 kilograms, had a caliber of 5.8 millimeters, an effective range of 70 meters, and a magazine capacity of 15 rounds. I named it the Tiansun 1, codenamed TS1, after the Tiansun star among the 36 heavenly stars. With the name settled, this gun officially gained its identity. Next up is the sniper rifle, which is 916 millimeters long, weighs 4.3 kilograms, has the same 5.8 millimeters caliber, an effective range of 1,000 meters, and a magazine capacity of 5 rounds. I named it the Sky Defeated Type 1, codenamed TB1, after the Sky Defeated star. The reports on all 3 firearms are now complete. Only live ammunition is needed to prove their worth. Next up was the Armored Infantry Fighting Vehicle Project. The person in charge explained that this is a light-wheeled armored vehicle built on the Xingqian 001 off-road vehicle chassis frame, with the chassis having an explosion-proof structure to protect against IEDs and landmines. It is powered by 4 electric motors, with a maximum horsepower of 500 horsepower, full-time 4-wheel drive, a top speed of 170 kilometers per hour, a combat weight of 4.3 tons, can carry 8 people, and has a range of 1,700 kilometers. The vehicle can also be equipped with weapons such as machine guns and grenade launchers. After hearing this, I immediately named it the Tianfu 1 Light Armored Vehicle, and now we'll see how the actual test results turn out. The air defense missile for the missile project was named Tianyi, and the armed helicopter was named Tianwei. Although they are not yet finished products, their basic forms are already clear. After the meeting, I led everyone to the indoor shooting range. The first gun we tried was the Tiankuei 1. I had practiced a lot on Night Sky Island during this time, and I had already developed a feel for it. I raised the gun, aimed at the target, and fired a full magazine. The moment the gunshots rang out, my satisfaction grew stronger. The gun's stability was better than I had imagined. The Tiansun 1 and Tianbai 1 were given to Lin Dabiao for test firing. The final results were excellent. All 3 guns performed well, especially since they all used 5.8 millimeters ammunition, which greatly reduced logistical burden. I put down my gun and immediately ordered the 3 guns to be delivered to the arsenal for mass production as soon as possible. I then assigned new projects to 3 firearms project teams: light and heavy machine guns, grenade launchers, and rocket launchers. The 3 leaders immediately accepted the order. With the end of the year approaching, I announced that all project team members would receive an additional bonus of 100,000 yuan each, and the 3 teams that had completed their projects would each receive an additional 500,000 yuan. The conference room fell silent for a moment. 2,000 researchers, each firing a weapon worth hundreds of millions, but I don't care about that amount of money. What I need is for them to fully support the StarCraft weapon system. In the Zijing Villa, Mu Wanbing and I, who hadn't seen each other for months, still couldn't find peace. It wasn't until she was so tired that she was about to fall asleep that I got up and went to the study, but my mind was still racing with the events of the day. I visited many places that day. First, I chatted with Mr. Song at Kowloon Pavilion for more than an hour. He gave me a lot of practical advice, from island infrastructure construction to changes in the situation and my future plans. Afterwards, I went to the Star Academy of Sciences to learn about the research and development progress of several key technologies. I sat alone in the study for nearly an hour, smoking, until the ashtray was piled high with cigarette butts, and a new plan came to mind. Whether or not to make changes ultimately depends on a meeting back home. The next day, I returned to Jiangsheng with Mu Wanbing and the others. As soon as we arrived at the Jiang family villa, I sensed that something was amiss. In the living room, my mother Jiang Qingxue, Lu Ruyan, and the Mu family elders were already waiting. What's even more outrageous is that they weren't talking about anything else, but rather my marriage to Mu Wanbing. My mother spoke first, saying that Wanbing and I are not young anymore, and after dating for so long, It's time to settle down on marriage. She likes Wan Bing, has long treated her like a daughter, and is looking forward to having a child soon. Aunt Xian naturally had no objections, feeling that Wan Bing was about to graduate, and it would be better for both sets of parents to settle down sooner rather than later. Uncle Mu agreed verbally, but there was a hint of reluctance in his eyes. That's how fathers are. Even if their daughters are a little bit leaky, they can't bear to hand them over. In the end, my mom made the decision: get engaged in a couple of days, and get married as soon as possible after graduation. They were discussing animatedly, and no one noticed the bitterness that flashed in Lu Rian's eyes. She quickly suppressed that emotion, as if she had some secret that could only be buried deep in her heart forever. There was a noise at the door, and Lu Rian immediately got up to greet me. I had just gotten out of the car when I saw her walking towards me. We hadn't seen each other for half a year. She looked at me and said in a low voice that I had gotten a little darker. I jokingly complained that the sun in that awful place was so scorching, it could literally kill you in the summer. But she suddenly reminded me to be prepared, and Wan Bing and I were both stunned. She lowered her voice and said, "My mom, Uncle Mu, and Aunt Xia are discussing our marriage. They plan to have us get engaged in the next couple of days." Mu Wanbing's face instantly turned red, and I was stunned. I'm only 21, and my mom's already pressuring me to get married? There are tons of people born in the mid-90s who aren't married yet. Why is it so urgent for me? A post-2005? But I also know that most parents are like this. After entering the living room, we greeted the elders. My mother pulled Mu Wanbing to sit between her and Aunt Xia, while Lu Rian and I sat on the two-seater sofa, and Uncle Mu sat alone on the single sofa. My mom smiled and said, "We've been dating for almost 3 years. It's about time we settled down." Aunt Xia added, "Let's pick an auspicious day in the next couple of days and get engaged." I whispered that it was too early. Wanbing hadn't graduated yet, and I'd probably be away from China for most of the next 2 years. It wasn't that I didn't want to marry her, but I didn't want to be separated so much right after our engagement. But my mother glared at me and said that precisely because I was away from home all year round, it was even more important to give Wanbing a proper status. I shrank back, instantly not daring to argue anymore. This was the suppression of blood ties. After lunch, my mother and Aunt Xia continued discussing the engagement details, while Lu Rian and Uncle Mu returned to the company. Only Mu Wanbing and I were left with nothing to do, so we went back to the bedroom. She wrapped her arms around my neck, her cheeks still flushed, and whispered, "Are you really going to get engaged?" I teased her, "Are you going to back out?" She quickly shook her head, saying it was just too fast, and she wasn't mentally prepared. She then asked me what it felt like to be engaged. I thought about it seriously and realized I had no experience either, so I could only say that I'd never been engaged before, but I guess I'll have a chance to get rid of that plastic wrap in the future. She blushed and called me annoying, so I hugged her and casually asked how her company was doing. She was a little proud and said it was better than expected, with profits of at least 600 million this year. I complimented her, but she rolled her eyes at me and said, "Don't think I don't know. I asked Chairman Yang to secretly help you. Her business has been incredibly successful. It would be strange if she didn't have someone protecting her behind the scenes." With the backing of Kyoto Star Investment Group, partners came knocking on her door, contracts were delivered directly to her, and she even got the lion's share of the profits. While others negotiated like they were engaged in a fierce debate, she didn't even need to be present. Where could she possibly reason with them? It's fair to say that almost the entire Jiang and Mu families mobilized to prepare for my engagement ceremony with Mu Wanbing. Jiang Qingxue and Xie Qinghe, in particular, were incredibly busy, handling everything from invitations and flowers to drinks and desserts. An engagement is not a wedding. Originally, it was just a dinner party where relatives and friends were invited to witness the event, and the engagement was announced in public. However, the Jiang family is now the richest family in China, and the Mu family is also a powerful family in Jiangdong. Even if it is just a simple event, it is destined to be anything but simple. The date was set for December 31st, 2027, at the Jiang family villa. It was the last day of the old year and the eve of the new year, a day that should have been joyous. But the real trouble soon appeared before me. The invitation list became the biggest problem. Jiang Qingshue's old business friends needed to be invited, as did Mu's relatives and friends, Wanbing's roommates and best friends, and even the Jiang Group's top executives. All of those could be decided, but no one dared to make the final decision for my list. I had Fu Ning draft a list first, and then I personally screened them. But after all that back and forth, we still had over 100 names left. Looking at that string of names, my scalp tingled. If getting engaged is this difficult, what will the wedding day bring? Will it alarm half the business world? What's even more troublesome is the situation with local leaders. The Jiang Group's headquarters are in Jiangdong, so the leaders of Jiangdong province will definitely have to invite them. But the Jiang Group invested nationwide in the past, and many places have already expressed their gratitude. If Jiangdong invites them, will the other provinces invite them too? Inviting them might be too high profile, but not inviting them would be impolite. I was feeling annoyed when my phone suddenly rang. Seeing the caller ID, a smile immediately spread across my face. It was Lin Hai calling. It was like a lifeline. A plan instantly formed in my mind. As soon as the call connected, Lin Hai asked me with a hint of reproach why I hadn't told him about such a big event as the engagement beforehand. I quickly explained that the date was only set yesterday, and although I wanted to inform him, I was afraid of disturbing his work. I also said that since we are uncle and nephew, I could skip inviting anyone else, but I couldn't skip inviting him. Lin Hai chuckled at my words, and his tone softened. He asked if the wedding date was set, and I said we'd have the wedding after Wanbing graduates from Tsinghua and Peking universities. He nodded and said that was a good idea, adding that he'd come to Jiangxing on our engagement day and asked me to have a couple of drinks with him then. Immediately afterward, Lin Hai lowered his voice and reminded me to call Old Master Song. Old Master Song has always treated me like a junior member of his own family, and he would definitely be happy to know that I was getting engaged. I immediately agreed and prepared to ask Feng Yuan about Old Master Song's schedule first. Lin Hai then said that it would be best to inform the other elders as well, and that he would send me his secretary's contact information. My heart warmed, and I was about to thank him when he scolded me for being so fussy, telling me to just ask if I needed anything and not to be polite with him. I casually inquired about the invitation list. As if he had already guessed, Lin Hai directly asked if I was worried about whether or not to invite local leaders. I was startled, almost thinking someone had tipped me off, but then I thought, given his insight, it wasn't surprising that he had guessed. I explained all my concerns. Lin Hai pondered for a moment and then gave me the final word. The engagement ceremony would only invite leaders from Jiangdong. Other places would be discussed after the wedding. If anyone had any objections, they could come and talk to him. I'm worried this will cause him trouble. Lin Hai only replied with 2 words, "Who dares?" His tone was calm, yet it exuded confidence. The people of the 9 Dragons Pavilion, the elders' favorites. How could ordinary local officials dare to make things difficult for him? He said, "Go ahead and dump the trouble on me. I can't let you call me Uncle Lin for nothing." Hearing this, I was deeply moved. I had just opened my mouth to call him Uncle Lin when he interrupted me, saying that we were family and there was no need for further words. He had a meeting, and then he hung up the phone. I quickly called Feng Yuan to ask when Professor Song would be available to take the report. Feng Yuan checked his schedule and said that Professor Song's schedule was very full today, but he could spare about 10 minutes between 6 and 7 o'clock in the evening, and he would let me know in advance. Following Lin Hai's advice, I had Fu Ning continue deleting names from the list, narrowing it down to the safest possible range. Finally, the invitation list was reduced to less than 100 people, and I felt a sense of relief. At 6:40 p.m., Feng Yuan called right on time. I then called Old Song to report my upcoming engagement. After listening, Old Song pondered for a moment and simply said, "That's good. It's a good thing." I was just about to explain that I needed to contact several other elders, but Elder Song saved me the trouble. He said there was an elders meeting later, and he would tell them in person, so I wouldn't have to call them one by one. I quickly thanked Mr. Song. At this moment, the most troublesome part, the list of invitees, was finally settled. Now everything was in place, and all that remained was the engagement day. December 31st, 2027, the day the old year gives way to the new, is also the day Mu Wanbing and I get engaged. Originally, I only planned to hold a banquet at the Jiang family villa, but there were too many guests, including many important figures from the military and political circles, so I had to change the venue to the Star Hotel at the last minute. On this day, the Star Hotel ceased operations, and all its staff, including ushers, receptionists, and service personnel, were reassigned. Star Security Group arrived early and thoroughly searched the hotel several times, with nearly 100 bodyguards deployed throughout, creating an atmosphere even more tense than a major summit. My identity is too sensitive. The more joyous the occasion, the more I fear someone might take advantage of the chaos. There are bodyguards on the surface, but there are also special security personnel, national security officers, and plainclothes police officers in the shadows. The fourth floor has even been temporarily requisitioned, with special police assault teams and armed police special forces on standby at any time. Traffic control measures were implemented on several streets surrounding the hotel, with traffic police stationed at various intersections. Anyone who dared to cause trouble today would likely be apprehended before even reaching the hotel entrance. The lobby on the first floor was decorated in Wanbing's favorite pink. As soon as you enter the revolving door, you can see a huge photo of me holding her. We are smiling sweetly in the photo. The whole scene is gorgeous and solemn, like a grand ceremony watched by the whole city. At 10 a.m. sharp, the convoy entered the Star Hotel. At the front were two black Mercedes-Benz GLS bodyguard vehicles, followed by my Hongqi State gift car, which had been temporarily modified into a pink and white two-tone color scheme and was armored. Behind that were more than 90 luxury cars. 66 Hongqi Golden Sunflower Goya cars, 10 Rolls-Royce Phantoms, 10 Cullinans, and 10 Mercedes-Benz G-Class cars, totaling 99, symbolizing longevity. All the cars were uniformly pink and white, stunning passers-by as soon as they appeared. To get these cars repainted, car wrapping shops in Jiangcheng and surrounding cities were practically running at full speed, each receiving a red envelope of 99,000 yuan. To gather enough Hongqi Guya cars, I simply bought up all the new cars from a batch of 4S stores in Jiangdong. Anyway, I'm not short of money. After the ceremony, some of these cars will be sent to the Jiang Group for reception purposes, and the rest will be sent to the Star Academy of Sciences as awards to scientists who have made outstanding contributions. The money has been spent, the prestige has been achieved, and the purpose has been fulfilled. Before the engagement ceremony even started, videos of the wedding procession went viral on major short video platforms. My engagement hashtag reached the top of the trending list in less than a minute, but 5 minutes later, all the trending topics were mysteriously removed, clearly indicating that someone had intervened. Media reporters rushed over, eager to be the first to know the news. But they couldn't even get into the hotel. Just as they were about to argue their case, they received a call from their superiors, ordering them to return immediately and strictly forbidding any reporting on the engagement. I took Mu Wanbing's hand, and we walked into the hotel under everyone's gaze. There was still some time before the ceremony was scheduled to begin at 11:08, so I went to the private room on the third floor to greet the VIPs. The people sitting there were all of great importance. Pushing open the door to the innermost private room, the first thing I saw was Lin Hai, the director of the General Office of Jiulong Pavilion. Next to him were Fong Yuan Chao, the secretary of the Jiangdong Provincial Party Committee, Ma Hongbin, the governor, Yin Chang, the secretary of the Political and Legal Affairs Commission, several vice-governors, and Su Pinggu, the commander of the provincial military region. Almost all the main leaders of the two leading bodies of Jiangdong province were present, and to my surprise, Feng Yuan was also there. I suppressed my inner turmoil and took the initiative to greet them. Distinguished leaders, thank you for coming. Everyone laughed and teased me, saying the groom-to-be was indeed in high spirits. Lin Hai waved to me, and I immediately went over and respectfully addressed him as Director Lin. In public, it's basic etiquette to address someone by the proper form of address. Lin Hai smiled and said that he came here both on personal terms and on behalf of Kowloon Pavilion to congratulate me, wish me a happy engagement, and also hoped that I would get married soon and have many healthy sons. Laughter immediately filled the private room. At this moment, Feng Yuan took out a scroll and respectfully said that Elder Song had prepared a gift for me. I took it and unfolded it, and saw that it had 4 characters written by Elder Song himself, Wen Ding Ji Xiang, meaning auspicious and prosperous journey. The private room fell silent instantly, everyone gasping. Old Master Song's handwritten inscription carried immense weight. I carefully put it away, saying earnestly that I would definitely hang it in the most prominent place when I got back. At 11:08 a.m., the engagement ceremony officially began. Mu Wanbing and I recited our vows in front of everyone, exchanged engagement rings, and shared our vows. At that moment, holding her hand, I felt an unprecedented sense of peace. In the evening, a small reception was held at the Jiang family villa, attended primarily by business people. After the ceremony, Lin Hai and Feng Yuan returned to Kyoto, and the leaders of Jiangdong Province and Jiangxing City also went back to work. However, Jiangdong Province still sent a vice-governor, and Jiangxing City also sent its mayor and the vice-mayor in charge of investment promotion. Their purpose was very direct. They hoped to attract some investment from the Jiang Group, since no one would complain about having too much investment. Finally, the grand engagement ceremony came to an end. Though the ceremony was over, its warmth lingered long afterward, for this engagement was truly unforgettable. Chapter 211, A New Chapter on Night Sky Island. When I left China this time, I took with me the blueprints for 3 firearms and experimental guns. The Tianfu 1 light armored vehicle is still undergoing adjustments in the workshop and will be tested in 2 more rounds, but I can't wait that long. Once the armored vehicle trials are successful and production begins, we'll arrange for a special person to deliver it to Night Sky Island, and the production line will be adjusted accordingly. I also instructed Li Zhongfeng to integrate his steel companies and subsequently procure special steel and composite alloys under the name of HC Investment Group. Accompanying me to the island were some researchers from the Star Academy of Sciences, who were responsible for debugging the firearms production line. The arsenal personnel were recruited domestically with high salaries and were brought to the island together after signing confidentiality agreements. These people can bring their families. Accommodations and family housing will be provided on the island, and their families can also work for HC Investment Group. Only by resolving all their concerns can they work for me with peace of mind. Before leaving, I naturally spent some time with Mu Wanbing. We were already engaged, and that barrier between us had completely disappeared. This time, leaving China, I felt less burdened, but more ambitious. Back in my office on Night Sky Island, I immediately convened a high-level meeting. Xie Shuyun, Tang Xing, and senior officers from the Dark Knight Army, including Nie Gang and Wang Meng, were all present. Everyone knew that a new chapter was about to begin. I briefly outlined the achievements of our trip to China, emphasizing the specific weapons we had developed. Then I looked at Xie Shuyun and ordered her to draw personnel from HC Investment Group to establish the Dark Knight Army's General Logistics Department. Arsenals, automobile factories, tank factories, aircraft factories, and shipyards were all placed under the jurisdiction of the General Logistics Department. They were also responsible for the procurement of raw materials, with the Jiang Group providing assistance in the purchasing. Xie Shuyun will temporarily serve as the head of the logistics department. When I said this, I knew very well that what Night Sky Island lacked was not money or ambition, but rather sufficiently trustworthy senior management talent. Then I looked at Tang Xing and instructed him to establish a separate department within the finance department, responsible for the salaries, military expenditure calculations, and allocations of the Night Army soldiers. This department was subordinate to the General Logistics Department, but would be temporarily under his control. Tang Xing immediately agreed. I asked how much cash the group had in its accounts, and he reported that its working capital was less than 100 billion, with 53.4 billion available for immediate use. This amount was sufficient, at least for the short term, to allow me to expand my operations. Then, I turned my gaze to several officers of the Dark Knight Army. Nie Gang is now the director of the Military Training Department, in charge of the training of the entire army. I asked him about the results of the troops' reorganization and training, and he replied in a loud voice that they were ready to carry out combat missions at any time. I nodded. There was less than a month and a half until the Chinese New Year, less than 50 days at most. Before the New Year, I had to ensure the Dark Knight Army established a firm foothold in the Golden Triangle. That would be the first step in Night Sky Island's true expansion. I named a place, Kaya State in the north. It's the region I've been focusing on most in recent intelligence. It's a place of complex power struggles, where killings happen almost daily chaos, but but also opportunity. According to intelligence, there are several major forces in Kaya State, including the United Kaya Army, the Kaya National Army, and the Kaya National Army. The United Kaya Army controls about 90% of the land, with a force of around 30,000, and is composed of multiple armed groups. The Khwarezmian Army mainly controls the cities of Ligu, Bigan, and Balak, with a permanent garrison of approximately 2,000 troops. The Kaya National Army has 8 battalions, also close to 2,000 men, and its operations are similarly spread across multiple regions. The Kaya Front is a complex and intertwined mess, with no truly safe zones, and many countries consider it a top security risk. But that's precisely what I value. The more unstable the situation, the greater the opportunity for the Dark Army to infiltrate. In terms of population, official statistics show 290,000, but the conflict has displaced half of the population, so the actual number is likely much lower. The economy is fragile, reliant on agriculture, and while it possesses abundant resources, the war has prevented stable development. There is the largest hydroelectric power station in the country, supplying 1/5 of the nation's electricity, yet the state itself suffers from power shortages. It also has the largest tungsten mine, as well as resources such as tin and marble, but production has been hampered by conflict. Transportation is even worse. Mountain roads are passable on sunny days, but impassable on rainy days. Rivers are poorly navigable, border crossings are intermittently open and closed, and logistics costs are exorbitantly high. What is a quagmire for others is an entrance for me. My throat was parched from talking, so I picked up my teacup and took a big gulp. Then I looked at Xie Shuyun and asked her if her group had any investments in Kaya State. After checking her computer, she replied that there weren't any at the moment. I put down my teacup and glanced at everyone in the conference room. Since there's no investment, we'll start from scratch. Since things are chaotic there, let the Dark Knight Army bring order back. I said in a deep voice, "All right, follow my orders. Listen to my orders," I said coldly, and the conference room fell silent instantly. Everyone straightened their backs, their eyes filled with a fierce determination to go into battle. I scanned the crowd and gave the order. The Special Operations Squadron, as the first force, would infiltrate Kaya State in northern Myanmar's Golden Triangle, seize key areas, and create an opening for the main force to follow. The 1st Infantry Battalion, as the second batch of reinforcements, entered Kaya State in batches after the Special Operations Squadron had established a foothold to help them expand their controlled area like a nail driven into that chaotic land. The remaining troops will remain on Night Sky Island for training. This time, I'm only deploying the Special Operations Squadron and the 1st Infantry Battalion, nearly 400 elite soldiers, enough to take a bite out of the enemy. I then ordered HC Investment Group to immediately mobilize resources and, by any means necessary, send them into Kaya State. Guns alone are not enough to completely control a territory. Guns can instill fear, but they can't make people truly submit. I want to strike them hard with one hand and give them a way to survive with the other, so that the people of Kaya understand that their lives will be better if they follow us. After everyone acknowledged the order in unison, I told them to go and prepare, leaving only Nye Gang behind. I looked at him, my tone calm, yet I had placed the heaviest burden on his shoulders. I told Nye Gang that he would be in charge of the Special Operations Squadron and the 1st Infantry Battalion, and that he would be the forward commander. Within 20 days, we must establish an impregnable frontline base in Kaya State. I reminded him that we have limited manpower and cannot directly control large tracts of territory, much less engage in a war of attrition with all forces. The truly smart approach is to have locals manage locals. We'll remain behind the scenes, teaching them how to fight, providing them with weapons and funding, and supporting our own forces. The equipment produced by the arsenal will be prioritized for the front lines, while any obsolete equipment will be given to those we support. Nye Gang immediately understood what I meant and gave me a standard military salute. To put it bluntly, this was a different way of recruiting them, using their hands to stabilize our territory. The next day, Nye Gang led 98 members of the Special Operations Squadron away from Night Sky Island on a cargo ship. The ship's hold was filled with various goods, ostensibly commercial supplies transported by HC Investment Group to Myanmar. HC Investment Group is now expanding rapidly in Southeast Asia, investing in numerous industries and maintaining connections with officials in many countries. This time, they used the guise of an investment inspection to conceal weapons within the goods. 2 days later, the cargo ship arrived in Myeongdong. HC Investment Group had bribed local officials in advance and received benefits from the border inspection team, so the entire shipment was released with almost no inspection. The regional head of Myeongdong personally came to meet them, bringing 7 SUVs, 5 buses, and 6 trucks. He didn't know Nye Gang's true identity and only assumed he was from the group's security department. Nye Gang's public identity is the security minister of HC Investment Group, and the special forces members around him are high-paid bodyguards. This disguise is simple, yet enough to deceive others. The person in charge advised Nye Gang to go to the hotel to rest, but Nye Gang refused. He said he still had a mission to complete, to deliver a batch of goods to Kai Estate. The person in charge's expression immediately changed. Kai Estate has been rife with conflict recently, with armed groups clashing at any moment, making it dangerous to go there rashly. The person in charge wanted to advise them to report to headquarters first, but Nye Gang only said that he had already given prior notice. Seeing that he couldn't dissuade them, the person in charge could only sigh and tell them to be more careful. After all the vehicles had driven away, he stood there for a long time, never imagining that these people had gone to seize territory. In the evening, the convoy entered Kai Estate. Nye Gang had looked at the map and saw that the capital, Loikal, was not far ahead, but he did not enter the city and instead chose the Porik township. The fortified position was controlled by the Myeon army, while the surrounding rural areas were inhabited by KNDF militants, making ambushes a constant possibility. Even before they arrived, Nye Gang had all his team members load their weapons and prepare for battle. The journey was relatively smooth, and the convoy encountered no resistance. Finally, they stopped in an empty village outside the town of Polek, where all the villagers had long since been evacuated due to the fighting. Nye Gang immediately arranged for a guard post to be established, while the rest of the men rested on the spot. He then convened a meeting with the Special Operations Company Commander, Deputy Company Commander, and 3 squad leaders. He spread out a map and pointed to the location beneath his feet. This is the Polek township on the outskirts of Loik, near Kayan State. The primary task is to capture this area, turn it into a fortress, and await the arrival of follow-up troops. They had fewer than 100 men. It wouldn't be difficult for them to inflict heavy damage on the Northern Army in the town, but wiping them out completely wouldn't be so easy. Once they opened fire, nearby forces would notice. But the situation in Kaya is too chaotic. All sides are busy fighting each other and may not be able to attend to them in the short term. This chaos is precisely the opportunity one prepared for them. Nye Gang immediately ordered one squad to infiltrate the town to find out the firing points and the location of armed personnel. The second squad modified off-road vehicles, mounted heavy machine guns on the roofs, and turned them into mobile firing points. The 3 squads used the supplies on board to build makeshift defensive fortifications on the spot. If the situation got out of control, they would retreat here and hold their ground until they had gathered intelligence before devising an attack plan. This is the safest option Nye Gang could come up with. Chapter 213 Fierce Battle in the Town. The next day, the reconnaissance intelligence was delivered to me. The enemy forces in the town of Polek numbered only about 160, less than a combat company, and they had no heavy weapons. Their firing positions and troop deployments had already been identified by the Special Operations Squad. Nye Gang immediately gathered several squad leaders to formulate a plan. With limited manpower, a direct confrontation was likely to lead to unforeseen circumstances, so he decided to launch a night raid, taking advantage of the enemy's moment of weakness to destroy their command system in one fell swoop. Special Operations Team 1 is responsible for decapitation strikes, capturing or eliminating military officers within the town. Special Operations Team 2 is responsible for removing all sentry posts and sealing off all entrances and exits to prevent anyone from escaping. Special Operations Team 3, personally led by Nye Gang, stormed into the town to clear out resistance forces, and then, together with Team 1, took control of the military camp. This plan was risky, but night combat was precisely the Special Operations Team's forte. Nia Gang sent the operational plan back to headquarters via coded telegram, and after reviewing it, I immediately approved the operation. At the same time, I ordered the 1st Infantry Battalion to proceed to Kaya State to reinforce the Special Operations Company and stabilize the situation. In the early hours of the morning, the town was deathly silent. People were sleeping soundly, and their vigilance was at its lowest. Nia Gang led his Special Operations Squadron closer silently, the entire team blending into the shadows of the night without alerting anyone. The military had no idea that an elite force belonging to no faction in Kaya State had infiltrated the town. Special Forces Squad 2 split into 2 groups and began clearing out the outer sentries. They crept up from behind, one slitting the sentry's throat with a dagger while the other caught the falling gun. The movements were terrifyingly clean. Not even a thud could be heard. The darkness provided them with perfect cover. Meanwhile, a special operations squad stormed into the officers' quarters and subdued all the company and platoon officers who were still asleep. 2 of them tried to resist, but their throats were slit on the spot as soon as they reached out. If someone chooses to die when they could live, then they have no one to blame but themselves. The remaining officers had their hands tied behind their backs and their mouths taped shut. Only 2 team members were left to guard them, while the rest quickly moved towards the military camp. Nia Gang led 3 squads in a synchronized infiltration into the town, eliminating firing positions according to intelligence locations. One by one, hidden sentries were taken out, and threats were eliminated. They finally rejoined a squad 10 minutes later. Nia Gang glanced at the time, his eyes as cold as knives. More than 50 Special Forces soldiers lay in ambush outside the military camp, each exuding a strong killing intent, like reapers crawling out from the depths of the battlefield. "Move out," Nia Gang ordered in a low voice. The next second, Special Forces soldiers stormed into the military camp, where only a little over 100 ordinary soldiers remained. The officers had been captured, and the command system was completely paralyzed. Several grenades were thrown into the makeshift barracks, and the explosions instantly ripped the roof off. The soldiers, still half asleep, were blown to pieces, and those who survived were barely able to get up when gun barrels were already pointed at their faces. Special Forces soldiers stormed into the building, first firing warning shots into the air to intimidate them, then pointing their guns at the soldiers. Completely terrified, the soldiers didn't even have the courage to resist, and immediately raised their hands and knelt in surrender. The entire battle was over in less than 30 minutes. Taking over a town in half an hour, such efficiency would strike fear into the hearts of any enemy. Nia Gang didn't let his guard down. He immediately ordered his men to tally the casualties and continue clearing the streets. Gung Dahai came to report that all personnel in the barracks had been brought under control. Nia Gang ordered a small team to guard the prisoners, while the 3rd team continued searching for any remaining prisoners. At the same time, he reported to headquarters that the town of Bolak had been initially captured. By daybreak, the entire town had been thoroughly searched twice, but no one escaped. No one in the Special Operations Squadron was killed. Only 2 members sustained minor injuries, which were quickly treated and are now out of danger. In this battle, 2 officers and 47 soldiers were killed, and 106 were captured. More than a dozen were wounded, 4 of whom were seriously injured. Given the local medical conditions, they could only treat their wounds first, and their survival was in the hands of fate. Nia Gang stood before the prisoners and coldly asked if anyone could speak Mandarin. At first, no one dared to move, but after Gung Dahai shouted angrily, a soldier finally raised his hand, trembling, and said he could translate. Nia Gang told him to step forward and reveal his identity. They might not have heard of the Dark Knight Army, but their strength was undeniable. Surrender meant survival, and they would receive guns, money, supplies, and even help rebuild their homes. But if anyone feigns surrender, the Dark Knight Army will hunt them down to the bitter end. Escaping to the ends of the earth won't help. As soon as he finished speaking, more than a dozen trucks loaded with supplies drove into the military camp, and the prisoners' eyes instantly changed. Nia Gang then produced another gold bar, its golden light dazzling in the sunlight. Fear and temptation overwhelmed them, and nearly 100 prisoners surrendered one after another, knowing that the man who had defeated them in half an hour was not someone to be trifled with. Nye Gang first ordered food to be distributed to the prisoners. Once they tasted the hot food, they became even more convinced that surrendering was the right choice. He then ordered Gung Dahai to leave men to guard the prisoners, and all the munitions to be stored away, to be kept secret for the time being. Gung Dahai immediately accepted the order. Nye Gang glanced at the now quiet military camp and whispered an order for the rest of his brothers to take a break and wait for the main force to arrive. The gunfire and explosions in the town of Polek quickly alerted the KNDF. They sent out a small team to investigate, but they couldn't even reach the edge of the town. They only saw that the checkpoints and firing positions were still operating as usual. But they didn't know that the town had already changed hands. The guards dressed differently from the soldiers, yet they were well hidden in the night, and the news of the change of ownership in Polek still hadn't spread. Another day passed, and the 1st Infantry Battalion I dispatched arrived in Polek with a large amount of supplies. Renin conveyed my orders to him in person. Clear the obstacles as soon as possible and expand the controlled area. 2 weeks from now, the HC Investment Group's assessment team will enter Kaya State. I need them to cooperate with the military operation from an economic perspective to completely suppress Kaya State. Because communications are prone to leaks, I had Lei Ning relay the order verbally. After receiving the order, Nye Gang immediately decided to transform the town of Boluk into a fortress, so that if they couldn't hold off the enemy and other armed forces, they could retreat and continue fighting. Over the next few days, Nye Gang dispatched special operations squadrons to conduct reconnaissance, gathering information on troop deployments and activity ranges in the fortified area. Every piece of intelligence was crucial to future casualties. At the same time, he reorganized the captured soldiers into 2 infantry platoons, returned their weapons, and put them in charge of guarding the town. Those who can be used must be put to good use. 2 days later, the Special Operations Squadron had roughly surveyed the area around Legu. During this time, they clashed with several armed groups, and 2 more team members were injured, but fortunately, their lives were not in danger. The emergence of this mysterious force has put all factions in a state of tension. All sides are restraining their troops, forbidding unauthorized actions, tightening defensive lines, increasing firing positions, and filling the air with the smell of gunpowder. In the Temporary Operations Command Post, Nye Gang convened a meeting with Gung Dahai, Lei Ning, and several officers. With only a week left before the HC Investment Assessment Team arrived, they had to secure the key areas. Gung Dahai first reported the intelligence. Within the fortified area, there were nearly 10 armed groups of varying sizes. The Myeondian Regular Army numbered about 3,000, including infantry, artillery, and armored troops, guarding the core stronghold of the city. In addition, there are about 700 militia and border troops, bringing the total strength of the army to nearly 3,800. They have an advantage in heavy weapons and air support, making them a tough nut to crack. On the other side was the Kyrgyz coalition. The KMPP had about 1,000 men and were the backbone of the coalition. The KNDF had about 2,000 men, who were young and mobile and were the main force on the front line, and the KMPLF had 400 men, who were stationed in the western suburbs. PDF has about 500 men, skilled in light guerrilla warfare and urban raids. KNU has another 300 men in the northern mountains, responsible for coordination and supplies. The total number of armed men in Legu is about 8,200. Nye Gang's face darkened after hearing this. We only have the Special Operations Squadron and the 1st Infantry Battalion, less than 400 men in total, and those 2 reorganized platoons can't be used as the main force either. The enemy forces outnumbered us 20-1. The meeting room fell silent instantly. Everyone knew that a direct confrontation was hopeless, but the mission was there, to take Legu with minimal losses. Just when the atmosphere reached its peak, Lei Ning spoke up. He pointed out that only 3 forces could truly influence the course of the war: the army, the KNDF, and the KMPP, totaling 6,000 men. If these 3 forces were to fall into disarray, a breach would appear in the fortifications. Lei Ning's method was simple: use special operations to attack their supply lines, and then frame the other side for the attack. Nye Gang's eyes lit up. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Once they've locked grudges, we'll strike from behind. That's our chance to use 400 men to intimidate 8,000. The following day, the Special Operations Squadron split into 3 groups and simultaneously attacked the supply lines of the Surface Army, KNDF, and KMPP. The logistics of the 3 sides were attacked almost at the same time, and the traces at the scene all pointed to each other. The Special Operations Squadron withdrew immediately after the attack, leaving no survivors or weaknesses. When the news reached the 3-way command headquarters, everyone was furious, and the already tense situation instantly escalated. The enemy forces suspected the coalition forces of sabotage. The KNDF believed the enemy forces struck first, and the KMPP also felt they had been outmaneuvered. Meanwhile, Special Operations Squadrons continued to harass them from the shadows, further fueling their anger. Soon, all sides engaged in full-scale firefights, with troops being continuously deployed and casualties rapidly escalating. When the battle reached a stalemate, Niegang finally made his move. He led a Special Operations Squadron and an infantry battalion in a surprise attack on KMPP from the rear. More than 400 well-trained soldiers unleashed their full firepower, like a sharp knife piercing the enemy's back. KMPP had initially focused its main defensive line on the front lines, never expecting to be stabbed in the back. By the time they tried to redeploy troops, their rear was already in complete chaos. In less than an hour, KMPP was completely crushed, almost entirely wiped out. With the disappearance of this core force, the situation on the fortified battlefield changed instantly, shocking all factions, large and small. Chapter 2:15 Battle of Fortified Grounds. After KMPP was destroyed, everyone assumed it was the enemy's doing, but the enemy themselves were also confused. They hadn't planned any sneak attack. All their forces were concentrated on the main battlefield. But this unexpected event directly reduced the pressure on the enemy forces. I knew very well that they wouldn't let this opportunity pass. Daegu had been torn apart by various forces for too long, and now it was finally their turn to counterattack. In less than an hour, the army launched a general offensive against KNDF, with infantry, artillery, and armored units all rushing in, and 2 armed helicopters also flying over the battlefield to frantically clear ground firing points. KNDF was forced into a series of defeats, losing large swaths of territory. The commander was furious and ordered everyone to hold their ground and to use anti-aircraft fire to shoot down the helicopters. In less than 20 minutes, they had lost nearly 2/3 of their position, suffered nearly half their casualties, and the remaining nearly 1,000 men huddled on the last line of defense, their eyes filled with despair and rage. Listening to the distant artillery fire in the town of Bolak, I felt no relief. Niegang ordered the troops to rest and replenish ammunition, because the real battle was far from over. In this raid on KMPP, we captured more than 100 people, but we also paid a price. 6 brothers were killed, 7 were seriously wounded, and more than a dozen were slightly wounded. Niegang stared at the wounded, his voice heavy, and ordered everyone to do everything in their power to treat them. The fallen brothers should be cremated after the battle, and their ashes must be sent back to China. They must not remain in a foreign land. Geng Dahai and Lei Ning both nodded, their eyes red, but neither had time to grieve. The gunfire hadn't stopped, the enemy hadn't been wiped out, so they could only suppress their pain and keep fighting. The battlefield soon changed again. Several small forces suddenly reinforced KNDF and harassed the front army from the rear. The front army's offensive was forced to slow down, and it could only withdraw troops to defend. KNDF seized the opportunity to launch a counterattack, recapturing considerable territory. The fortified position was in complete chaos, with all factions fighting fiercely and people falling almost every second. As evening approached, the gunfire gradually subsided. The MK Army, KNDF, and other forces all suffered heavy casualties. At least 3,000 men died in half a day, not counting the KMPP that we wiped out. As night fell, we devised a new plan in the town of Polek. With limited forces, we couldn't eliminate both the Mian Army and the Kyrgyz allied forces simultaneously, so our primary objective had to be the Mian Army. I made a clear judgment. Once the KNDF forces were crippled, the Kyrgyz coalition would be easier to deal with. They were just a hastily assembled force, outwardly obeying KNDF commands, but in reality, each had their own agenda. The final plan was finalized. Gung Dahai would lead the 1st Special Operations Squad and the 1st Infantry Company to raid the airport and seize the 2 armed helicopters. These things must not be left to the enemy. Nie Gang led the 2nd Special Operations Squad and the 2nd Infantry Company directly into the Army command post, destroying their command system. Lei Ning, on the other hand, led the 3rd Squad and the 3rd Company to launch an attack from the rear. At midnight, the 3 forces attacked simultaneously. The troops, who had just finished a day of bloody fighting and had only taken turns resting, were awakened from their sleep by gunfire from all directions. The airport, the rear, and the command post were all in urgent need of help, and reports kept reaching the ears of the field army commander. He was completely dumbfounded and couldn't understand where so many armed forces had suddenly appeared from. He hurriedly ordered a company to reinforce the airport, demanding that the 2 armed helicopters be protected from damage, and instructed all units to hold the line while requesting assistance from the Kaya State Command. Unfortunately, the order came too late, no matter how quickly it was given. At Legu Airport, Gung Dahai had already led his men to break through several lines of defense and forced the remnants of the Mian army into makeshift fortifications. His eyes were bloodshot. He ordered the 1st Special Operations Detachment to seize the helicopter, while he led the 1st Infantry Squadron to wipe out the remaining enemy. A round of rocket launchers blasted the fortifications into an instant inferno. The remaining troops could not hold out and had no choice but to surrender. Gung Dahai immediately ordered the wounded to be treated, the prisoners to be tied up, and fortifications to be built on the spot in preparation for ambushing the arriving reinforcements. Less than 15 minutes later, several cars rushed into the airport. Gung Dahai lowered his voice and shouted, "Fire!" The first shot knocked down a military officer, and the ambushing firepower exploded instantly. Bullets rained down like a storm, grenades pounded into the crowd, and rocket launchers blasted directly at vehicles. Simultaneously, 2 armed helicopters took off, and before the reinforcements could react, dozens were killed instantly. On Night Sky Island, though it was late at night, I couldn't fall asleep. Nie Gang delivered the battle plan in the evening. Tonight was the final assault on Legu. The battle wasn't over, and no one dared predict the outcome. Fu Ning came in to report that Xie Shuyun and the others had arrived in the conference room. I immediately got up and went over. Everyone had been summoned at the last minute, and their faces were all grim, because they knew that a battle was taking place in Legu. War is far removed from ordinary people, but now we are on the side of the battlefield. I asked everyone to sit down and got straight to 2 things. First, medical personnel and equipment must be sent to Kaya State tomorrow. I didn't dare send people there rashly before because the situation in Kaya State was unstable. Medical equipment can be replaced if it's lost, but if something happens to doctors or nurses, the consequences can't be solved with money. Now that the town of Bolak has been taken over by Nie Gang, Xie Shuyun has recruited more than a dozen doctors and more than 30 nurses, enough to build a small hospital. She promised on the spot that they would set off tomorrow. I then asked when the reinforcements from Xingchen Security Group would arrive. Wang Ming reported that over 200 people would arrive in the first 2 days, and another 800 or so would be sent to Night Sky Island after their 2-week training period. More importantly, this group also included 2 special operations instructors, covering personnel from the Army, Navy, and Air Force. A thought struck me. Zhou Yang was indeed capable, but I also understood that Elder Song and Elder Xiao were likely helping him behind the scenes. Then I asked about the arsenal's output. Xie Shuyun said that the factory produced 500 TK-1 automatic rifles, 100 TS-1 pistols, 30 terabytes 1 sniper rifles, 200,000 rounds of ammunition, and 1,000 hand grenades, operating 24 hours a day. Hearing these numbers didn't put me at ease. Producing the bullets was only the first step. The real challenge was getting them into Kaya State. This batch of weapons was too conspicuous, and if it were targeted, it would cause a lot of trouble. Xie Shuyun noticed my concerns and said that HC Investment Group had recently bribed several high-ranking officials in the noodle industry, one of whom was a high-ranking military official. She said that she could use his connections to transport goods, but that person was insatiable. Without hesitation, I made her agree to all their conditions. Money wasn't a problem for me. As long as I could support Nie Gang, I was prepared to get back 100-fold from Southeast Asia in the future. My final order was to dispatch the 2nd Infantry Battalion to reinforce Niegang, while also protecting medical personnel and supplies. Only after giving these 2 orders did I feel a little relieved, but the gunfire in Legu hadn't stopped. At this moment, on the battlefield of Legu, Gung Dahai had already wiped out the reinforcements of the Mian army. He ordered the 1st squad to escort the wounded and prisoners back to Bolak, the 2nd squad to hold the airport to the death, and the Special Operations Squad to take off in armed helicopters to provide support. On the other side, Lei Ning fought his way out from behind the enemy lines. The Night Army had fierce firepower, accurate shooting, and their individual soldiers were far superior to the enemy forces. The enemy troops retreated all the way, and if they were even a step too slow, they would fall to the muzzle of a gun. Lei Ning calmly divided his forces, flanking from the left and right, pursuing from the front, with the Special Operations team focusing on the enemy's light and heavy firepower points. He gave only one order: do not let them escape. Niegang's forces had already reached the temporary command post of the Mian army, where only a little over 100 Mian soldiers remained. The Mian army commander was completely devastated. He never imagined that what truly defeated them was not the Kyrgyz allied forces. He then realized that the mysterious armed force before him was the same group that had raided the town of Polek a few days earlier. Unfortunately, he realized this too late. The Dark Knight army had already cut off their retreat, and the encirclement was completely closed. Niegang ordered the Special Operations Squad to flank the enemy, the 1st and 2nd squads to intercept reinforcements, and the 3rd squad to launch a frontal assault. Just as he finished speaking, the roar of armed helicopters filled the air. Gung Dahai had arrived. Without a bugle call, Niegang was the first to charge out, advancing rapidly using tactical maneuvers. His rifle fired in rapid bursts, the bullets accurately tearing through the enemy's defensive line. The rest of the soldiers followed closely behind, and the final offensive pressed in completely. Less than an hour later, the last gunshot rang out, and most of the Legu army was annihilated, with more than 300 men captured. Niegang immediately ordered the wounded to be rescued and the prisoners to be escorted away, while the rest rested on the spot. The intense fighting has exhausted them, but they cannot afford to relax. If they defeat the Kyrgyz alliance tomorrow, the entire fortified region will fall into the hands of the Night Army, and we will finally have a foothold. Although the fighting on the enemy's positions had ended, the opposing Kyrgyz forces didn't dare close their eyes all night. Gunfire and explosions rang out until dawn. They thought the enemy would launch a night attack, but instead received news of the enemy's complete annihilation. Over 1,000 soldiers were wiped out overnight. This news hit Legu like a boulder, throwing all the armed forces into panic. They couldn't understand when such a powerful army had emerged from Legu, and they were even less certain whether they would be the next target. At the same time, Niegang received a reply from Night Sky Island while in his military fortifications. The 2nd Infantry Battalion was on its way to reinforce them, and medical personnel and equipment would also arrive, preparing to establish a field hospital in Legu. This meant that our feet had truly stepped into the Golden Triangle. Niegang immediately reported that the Legu army had been wiped out and the troops were resting for the time being. They would continue their surprise attack on the Kia coalition tonight. The next step was to use Legu as the center and expand their influence outwards, turning it into a military fortress for the Dark Knight army. At 8 p.m. that evening, Niegang personally commanded the Special Operations Squadron and ordered a full-scale attack. The core of the operation was simple: exploit the weakness of the disunity among the various factions of the Kyrgyz coalition and specifically attack their junctions. The 1st Infantry Battalion was responsible for the outer encirclement, completely cutting off their retreat. The Kyrgyz coalition was well prepared, doubling its guard numbers, but it was still riddled with weaknesses against the Night Army. Under the cover of darkness, the soldiers crept outside the camp, silently eliminating the sentries with daggers. Some tackled and slit throats, others circled behind and covered mouths, and still others helped catch the bodies. The entire infiltration process was as smooth as flowing water, without any unnecessary movements or alerting the enemy camp. By the time Niegang led the Special Operations Squadron close to the junction of the Allied forces, A gap had already been torn in their seemingly impenetrable defenses. After the battle broke out, the Kyrgyz allied forces had no time to organize an effective counterattack. In less than 2 hours, this well-fortified allied force was routed. The reason was simple. They were poorly equipped, lacked heavy weapons, and were caught off guard by the Night Army. In this battle, we captured over 500 members of the Kyrgyz allied forces, but the cost was not low. The Special Operations Squadron suffered 4 casualties and 6 wounded. The 1st Infantry Battalion suffered 16 casualties and 24 wounded. Nia Gang felt heartbroken, but this was real war. When the battle report arrived at Night Sky Island, I looked at the document and said only 2 words: brilliant. In less than a week, we captured Legu, successfully taking the first step in the Golden Triangle. We had made a breakthrough militarily, and we had to catch up economically immediately. I immediately instructed HC Investment Group to take action. Over the next few days, Nia Gang continued to send troops to clear out the towns and districts of Legu, and the 2nd Infantry Battalion and medical personnel also arrived smoothly. They found an office building in the city and converted it into a temporary hospital. Subsequently, the Dark Knight Army began recruiting local civilians, paying them high salaries to build a fortified military hospital, rebuild fortifications, and clear buildings destroyed by the war. What could be repaired was repaired. What couldn't be repaired was demolished and rebuilt, with the money coming from the HC Investment Group. The more than 1,200 prisoners were all dispersed and reorganized by Nia Gang into 10 infantry battalions. The Dark Knight Army selected the best soldiers to train them, practicing military skills during the day and conducting ideological education at night, making them understand that we are not simply occupying the territory, but supporting the restoration of order in the local area. News of the mysterious occupation of Loikyu quickly spread throughout Kaya State. Strangely, all parties remained silent, none daring to make a move. They were all investigating our origins and wondering who was behind us. This silence gave Nia Gang time to build a solid foundation. A few days later, the HC Investment Group inspection team arrived, and Nia Gang dispatched a special operations squad and an infantry company to provide full protection, ensuring their safe completion of the investment assessment. Ultimately, HC Investment Group decided to initially invest 2 billion yuan in the post-war reconstruction and economic recovery of Legu and established HC Legu Company. The news caused a sensation among the people of Legu. They finally saw a glimmer of hope. With the Chinese New Year approaching, the construction of Legu is progressing as planned, but the area remains under martial law, with the military temporarily taking over administration, communications, transportation, and personnel movement. I had Legu establish a military government, appointed Wen Jie as commander-in-chief with the rank of colonel, and Ong Wei as administrative chief. This separation of military and administrative functions, with each managing their own area, prevented the power struggle from becoming chaotic. Subsequently, the Legu Military Advisory Committee was established, with Nia Gang as the chief advisor and Lei Ning, Geng Dahai, and Xiao Hu on the advisory list. Wen Jie and Ong Wei were also included, to facilitate the military's timely coordination of resources. An Administrative and Economic Development Advisory Committee was also established simultaneously, with the general manager of HC Legu Company serving as the chief advisor. Ultimately, Legu's military and economy are both dominated by the Dark Knight Army and HC Investment Group. In other words, I was the one who ultimately made the final decision. That day, the 2 advisory committees issued their first batch of orders, starting with recruitment and improving people's livelihoods to stabilize the county town that had just emerged from the flames of war. The Military Advisory Committee recruited soldiers from Legu, offering them all excellent benefits, and soldiers' families also received tax subsidies. Administratively, taxes were reduced, and farmers were exempted from land use tax. Commercial operations have also been liberalized, with business tax halved for the next 3 years, land for foreign investment free for the first 5 years, and business tax waived for the first 3 years. For Legu to recover, it is essential to get money and people moving. Streets destroyed by war began to be repaired, and new roads were redesigned. Educational and medical resources were integrated, school-age children were encouraged to enroll, and the government allocated 5% of its tax revenue annually for medical assistance. The Public Security Bureau also began to be rebuilt, and 300 police officers were recruited openly throughout the county. The county government established a Public Security Bureau, and separate agencies were set up in towns and urban areas to specifically crack down on illegal and criminal activities and suppress any signs of chaos. More than 200,000 people finally saw hope, and Daegu began to rise again from the ruins. As for me, I plan to return to China before the new year to hear a report from the Jiang Group, and then spend the new year with my mother and fiancé. Before leaving, I held a high-level meeting on Night Sky Island. Nia Gang and others from Daegu were unable to attend in person and could only participate via video conference. The meeting room was filled with high-ranking officials from HC Investment Group and the Dark Knight Army. I'm sitting in the head seat, so I'd like to start by wishing everyone a happy new year. Due to special circumstances, some people can't go home for the new year, so the entire company will issue a New Year bonus of 3,000 yuan, with frontline staff receiving 10,000 yuan. In addition, all positions will receive an extra month's salary as a year-end bonus. It sounds simple, but this amount of money adds up to several small goals. However, I know that morale is more important than money. Then, HC Investment Group began its report. Xie Shuyun was the first to stand up. She told me that the group had developed rapidly this year, with overseas investments covering the United States, Japan, Southeast Asia, and other regions. Currently, HC's total market capitalization has reached 1.8 trillion, fixed assets 1.4 trillion, and liquid funds 400 billion. Some low-yield industries have been sold off, and funds are beginning to flow towards the north and the Golden Triangle. Of these, investments in the northern region exceeded 10 billion yuan, and investments in the Golden Triangle region exceeded 30 billion yuan. Going forward, HC's investment direction will follow the expansion of the Dark Knight Army. Wherever the army advances, the economy will follow. Tang Xing and other senior executives also reported that, overall, HC's development this year has been very stable, and many of its plans have been implemented. With a stable budget, the Dark Knight Army has the confidence to expand. When it was the Night Army's turn to report, the content was more direct. The Army had expanded by 3 infantry battalions and 2 special operations companies, and the electronic jamming company had been upgraded to an electronic battalion, thus forming a combat system. The Marine Corps squadron was expanded into a Marine Corps battalion, and an additional Naval Aviation Squadron and 2 coastal defense battalions were added. The Navy converted 1 cargo ship and 3 fast attack craft, all of which were transferred to the Marine Corps battalion for use. The Air Force expanded from aviation squadrons to 2 aviation squadrons, anti-aircraft artillery squadrons to anti-aircraft artillery squadrons, ground crew squadrons to ground crew battalions, and added airborne troops, electronic warfare, radar, and meteorological squadrons. But the Air Force is still the most impoverished. It doesn't even have attack helicopters, let alone fighter jets. On the entire Night Sky Island, the only one that can fly is my personal plane, which can only be temporarily handed over to the Air Force for use as a training aircraft. Pilots are even more scarce. The entire Army has only 4, and they were recruited at great expense. For now, they can only serve as instructors to gradually train the Dark Knight Army's own pilots. Night Sky Armory also delivered results. Due to limitations in raw materials and production capacity, it can produce 1,000 TK-1 automatic rifles, 200 TS-1 pistols, and 50 terabytes 1 sniper rifles per month. The monthly production capacity is 20 tons of explosives, 300,000 bullets, 10,000 hand grenades, and 2,000 bombs of various types. With the current production capacity, it is sufficient to supply the Dark Knight Army, and weapons are secretly delivered to Daegu every month. The Tiansu-1 military off-road vehicle has a monthly production capacity of 30 units, and the Tianfu-1 light armored vehicle is already in mass production, with a monthly output of 10 units. As raw materials and production lines increase, production can continue to rise. All vehicles and armored vehicles will be delivered to the Dark Knight Army for use by the island's army. 3 days later, in Jiangcheng, I returned to the Jiang family villa. This time, it was just me and Fu Ning. I didn't want to disturb too many people, as I just wanted to spend the new year peacefully with my family. As soon as I entered, a soft figure rushed into my arms. Mu Wanbing had rushed back from Kyoto, and the moment she hugged me, most of the weariness I had been feeling instantly dissipated. Jiang Qingxue stood beside us without disturbing us. Her eyes were full of longing, but she left space for Wanbing and me. I leaned close to Wanbing's ear and whispered, "Mom's still here. I'll stay with you tonight." Wanbing blushed instantly, like a shy little girl. I looked at Jiang Qingxue and asked how she was feeling. I had long since become so familiar with calling her that, because the maternal love she gave me was so real that it couldn't be ignored. Jiang Qingxue smiled and said she was fine and even prepared my favorite dishes. I told her that I would be staying longer this time and also take the opportunity to expand the Jiang Group's business overseas. I also had to go to Kyoto tomorrow to report on the situation. She didn't ask any further questions, only nodding and telling me to eat first. That evening, the Mu family also arrived, and the two families sat down together for a reunion dinner. The lamplight was warm, like a cherished dream, but I knew the real storm was yet to come. The next morning, when I opened my eyes, Wanbing was still nestled in my arms, fast asleep. I gently pinched her cheek, and she mumbled, "Stop it," with her eyes closed, her voice soft and lazy. She was exhausted last night and didn't even have the strength to open her eyes. I didn't disturb her anymore, got up, dressed, put away the warmth of home, and boarded the private jet to Kyoto. After the plane landed, a chauffeur was already waiting at the airport. We had a smooth, unobstructed journey with all green lights. No one checked us or caused any delays. Many people see this as power, but I see it as responsibility. The car stopped outside Kowloon Pavilion. As soon as I got out, I saw Lin Hai standing on the steps waiting for me. I quickly went up to him and respectfully addressed him as Director Lin. After all, in a work setting, etiquette must never be forgotten. Lin Hai patted my shoulder and smiled, saying he heard I was coming and came out to meet me. Then he lowered his voice and told me he was going to make some progress. My heart lit up. I was genuinely happy for him. I asked him where he was going next. Lin Hai said, Bureau Level Committee, SJCSJ, continuing to serve concurrently as the Director of the General Office. That short sentence signified his formal ascent to the very top. I congratulated him with a smile, saying I should definitely mooch a drink sometime. Lin Hai immediately said he'd come to his house tonight and have his housekeeper cook a few dishes. As we were talking, we arrived outside that office. Feng Yuan was already waiting at the door. Upon seeing us arrive, he respectfully reported that Elder Song had specially set aside 2 hours. We went inside together, and Lin Hai chatted with us for a few moments before quickly taking his leave. I understand his sense of propriety. As the head steward of Kowloon Pavilion, he knows better than anyone what to listen to and what not to listen to. In the workplace, knowing too much isn't necessarily a good thing. Knowing when to step back is a true skill. Only Mr. Song and I remained in the office. He looked at me, his tone very kind, and asked how I was doing lately. I knew he wasn't asking about the Jiang Group, but rather about Night Sky Island and the Golden Triangle. I reported the current situation in detail. The Night Air Force has gained a firm foothold in the north and completely controlled Legu. The situation is gradually stabilizing, and the people's hearts are beginning to turn to our side. I mentioned HC Investment Group again. It is now the most important source of funding for Night Sky Island, providing a continuous influx of capital. All the funds are poured into construction and Night Sky Island's expenses, and each sum is substantial. After listening, Old Song nodded, but reminded me that I must proceed steadily and cautiously, taking one step at a time, and not be overly ambitious or hasty in trying to push things too far. I bowed my head in agreement, fully aware of the weight of his words. Then I explained my next plan. I would stay in China for a longer period this time to continue expanding the Jiang Group's business. Relying solely on HC Investment Group to support Night Sky Island is too risky. Therefore, I must build a new revenue-generating machine. The Jiang Group's overseas investment plan must also be launched simultaneously, expanding and suppressing in the economic field. Overseas investment plan. Old Song stared at me, his tone suddenly turning serious. He mentioned that the Jiang Group had once swept through 3 listed companies on the U.S. stock market, but was later forcibly sanctioned by foreign countries because of its super battery technology. As I heard this, my fists slowly clenched. Those people wanted to use economic sanctions to force me to hand over core technologies, but I didn't back down. However, the Jiang Group's overseas expansion was abruptly cut off. If I hadn't transferred the equity of several companies to HC Investment Group in time, ostensibly severing ties with the Jiang family, those three companies would have been pushed to the brink of bankruptcy long ago. This is the true face of the so-called free market. Old Song reminded me that if Jiang Zemin were to step into the international capital arena again, it would be tantamount to stealing their cake and butter. Those forces wouldn't stand idly by, and the sanctions weren't over yet. The path overseas was more treacherous than I had imagined. I calmly told him that I didn't intend to confront him head-on this time. I would mobilize massive amounts of capital and use countless accounts to stir up international stock markets, especially U.S. stocks, but not simply by shorting them. My last short selling of the Japanese stock market alerted many countries. This time, I'm going to follow the rules set by the capital. Whichever stock they want to drive up, I'll give it a push and get out before they reap the rewards. If they want to dump shares, I'll do the same. My only goal is to make more money from the international stock market, acquire more shares, and turn their rules into my personal ATM. Then, I will invest in countries that haven't sanctioned Jiang Zemin, especially those with untapped resources and underdeveloped economies. I will exchange funds for resources and use shared interests to bind local powers. As long as the Jiang Group controls their economic lifeline, it will be very difficult for them to resist. If anyone really turns against me, I will cut off their livelihood. At that time, I won't even need to lift a finger. Someone will naturally clean up the mess for me. Mr. Song was visibly stunned after hearing this. He had originally thought I just wanted to make money abroad and then give back to China, but he never imagined that what I really wanted to do was become an international financial tycoon. I know this path won't be easy. Controlling the economic lifeline is tantamount to being an invisible helmsman behind the nation. Neighboring South Korea is the best example. But I am different from those tycoons who only care about money. I want to control profits, and I also want to ensure that ordinary people can truly live a good life, so that they will genuinely accept me and the Jiang Group. Of course, not everyone knows how to be grateful. If someone takes advantage of me and then tries to bite me back, my solution is simple. They'll face certain death. Old Song remained silent for a long time. He didn't doubt my stance, because everyone could see what the Jiang family had done over the years. What he was truly worried about was that this game was too big enough to rewrite the world order. He suddenly realized that the establishment of HC Investment Group was probably not an ordinary plan from the very beginning. On the surface, the two lines were fighting their own battles, but behind them both truly pointed to him, Jiang Chun. If this can be accomplished, I will stand atop the heads of all the world's financial giants. At that point, so-called international financial tycoons will merely become pawns on my chessboard. Old Song stared at me and asked in a deep voice if I had made up my mind. He told me that, as before, I had to walk this path myself. He couldn't help me, and the country couldn't openly help me either. I looked at him and told him, word by word, that I had already taken the first step. Now that I've come this far, no matter what lies ahead, I will grit my teeth and see it through. Elder Song simply said good. Afterward, he summoned several elders for a high-secrecy meeting specifically to discuss my plan. The final outcome was subtle. The plan was neither approved nor rejected. It received neither support nor obstruction. Some things cannot be discussed openly, but not refusing is itself an attitude. Everyone knows that this game can only be played by me alone. They can't help from outside, but domestically, from today onwards, anyone who dares to touch the Jiang Group is going against Kowloon Pavilion. The next afternoon, I returned to Jiangxing from Kyoto. Last night, I drank quite a bit at Lin Hai's house and gave him a list. We both knew what to do with the people on the list. No matter where I am, I must have my own voice. Those people have clean records, outstanding abilities, and are capable and resilient. They were only suppressed in the past because no one offered them a helping hand. In just 1 week, the people on the list were successively promoted and given important positions. The lowest-ranking official became the top leader of a district or county, while the highest-ranking official directly became the standing committee member and vice governor of a province in charge of the economy, a true vice-ministerial level position with real power. This adjustment went unchallenged, as their resumes were more than sufficient for their positions. But from this moment on, the person standing behind them became me, Jiang Chun. Upon returning to Jiangcheng, I immediately instructed Fu Ning to notify the Jiang Group's senior management and advisory committee members. I was to convene a meeting that would determine the future of the Jiang Group. The headquarters building of Xinjiang Group has long been the most dazzling landmark in Jiangxing. The nearly 4,000-acre park, the 350-meter-tall main building, and the tens of thousands of employees coming and going here make it like a giant machine running at high speed every day. Because the Jiang Group settled here, dozens of partner companies followed suit, and Jiangxing was subsequently approved as a national-level economic development zone. Last year, the development zone's GDP alone exceeded 3 trillion yuan, and this does not even include all of the Jiang Group's revenue. Even more astonishing is that with annual tax revenue approaching 400 billion yuan, tens of billions of yuan are allocated to Jiangxing's finances. With this money, Jiangxing has launched dozens of projects to benefit its people, and the international metropolis that was once unthinkable is now truly taking shape. The influence of Jiangxing's leadership team has also risen accordingly, with even major families from the capital sending their scions here for experience. But no matter how powerful their background, everyone who arrives here understands one thing. The Jiang Group is an honored guest, and anyone who crosses them will perish. The example of the Liu family's downfall is still fresh in everyone's mind, and the attitude of the Nine Dragons Pavilion elders is also clear. Anyone who dares to covet the Jiang Group isn't just bold. They're simply overestimating the safety of their own clan. The day after I returned to Jiangxing from Kyoto, I convened a high-level meeting directly at the top floor of the Xinjiang Group headquarters. This meeting was to determine the group's development direction for the next 2, and even 4 or 5 years. Before 9 o'clock, all the senior executives had arrived at the conference room. Someone whispered that I was back, and someone else immediately reminded me not to talk nonsense, because on the surface, I had no connection with the Jiang Group anymore, and the group was even preparing to change its name to erase my traces. They didn't understand why I did this, and no one dared to ask. Everyone sitting here knew that some of the strategies were beyond their comprehension. Even understanding 20% of it would be enough for them to boast about for a lifetime. The meeting room was heavy with tension until footsteps approached. Liu Rian pushed open the glass door, stepped aside, and I walked in, wearing a gray suit, and sat in the head seat, which no one had dared to sit in for 6 months. All the senior executives stood up at the same time and respectfully greeted Chairman Jiang. At that moment, I looked at that familiar conference table and felt surprisingly calm. I simply said, "Everyone, it's been a long time." I told them that I had just returned to Jiangcheng a couple of days ago, then went to Kyoto, and only got off the plane last night. Originally, I just wanted to spend the new year quietly with my family, but I had some things weighing on my mind, and my time no longer belonged to myself. Several senior executives couldn't help but urge me to take care of my health, saying that I was the backbone of everyone. These words were sincere, because they all knew that without me, there would be no Jiang Group today, nor would they be in their current positions. I waved my hand, signaling them to hurry up and report. Liu Rian was the first to speak. Last year, the group's revenue was 7.18 trillion yuan, net profit was 1.45 trillion yuan, and taxes paid were over 500 billion yuan. The group currently has 210,000 employees, nearly 20,000 of whom are disabled. The average monthly salary for employees is 17,000 yuan, with frontline entry-level employees earning an average of 11,000 yuan, and even the lowest-paid employees earn more than 8,000 yuan per month. This standard is outrageous even by global standards. Even the most basic cleaning job, with benefits included, can earn around 140,000 yuan a year, which exceeds the salary of many technical positions in companies. Following this, Tang Qingqing, chairman of Xingqian Financial Development Group, continued her report. Last year, employee salaries exceeded 1 trillion yuan. Xingqian Bank attracted over 20 trillion yuan in deposits. The group's total market capitalization approached 20 trillion yuan, and total assets approached 17 trillion yuan. The group's debt is 2.7 trillion yuan, most of which comes from loans from Xingchen Bank and mainly flows to its subsidiaries at various levels. A supergroup with a scale of 17 trillion yuan has a debt of only 2.7 trillion yuan, a figure that is enough to silence all capital. Tang Qingqing added that last year, the auditing firm uncovered 34 problems involving 27 subsidiaries, and 73 individuals were transferred to judicial authorities. Xingchen Legal Services has handled 1,028 cases of various types and has remained undefeated to date. My eyes flickered slightly. These lawyers at Xingchen Legal Services are really this formidable? A perfect record of over 1,000 cases at this rate. They might even steal the title of Nanshan's Invincible Team. Next, by Mingyu, chairman of Xingchen Asset Management Group, gave a report. Xingchen Asset's business has covered the whole country, and last year it helped more than 500 companies turn losses into profits, and directly holds or indirectly holds shares in more than 300 companies. Currently, Xingchen Asset Management Group's assets have exceeded 1 trillion yuan, and it has successfully listed on the A share market. This achievement would be legendary for any other company, but for the Jiang Group, it is just one part of the story. Finally, by Ryu, chairman of Xingchen Talent Group, stood up to give a report. Last year, Xingchen Talent Group recruited more than 10,000 talents of various kinds, and more than 100 outstanding talents were assigned to the management of its subsidiaries. To date, Xingchen Talent Center has registered over 1 million people, making it the largest talent center in the country. It has also established in-depth strategic partnerships with nearly 100 well-known enterprises, recommending over 200,000 outstanding talents, receiving an extraordinary response and widespread praise. If we're talking about the most outstanding company in the past 2 years, it has to be Xingchen Energy Technology Group. It holds several world-leading technologies, attracting countless investors eager to collaborate, but the terms are set by us alone. The sanctions imposed on the Jiang Group by certain foreign powers have not stopped, but this cannot stop the products from flowing globally. If you don't let me sell, I can stop myself, but if people take the initiative to buy, you really can't stop them. Those financial tycoons knew better than anyone that touching their interests was tantamount to taking their lives. Therefore, many sanctions ultimately became ineffective, and Xingchen Energy's orders actually skyrocketed. During the high-level meeting, Muyu stood up and reported to me. Last year, the group launched new products, and the super battery and fast-charging technology were updated 3 times, fully meeting market demands. 8 battery and fast-charging system factories have already been built. With an annual production capacity of 30 billion kilowatt-hours of batteries and 5 billion sets of fast-charging systems, the conference room fell silent except for the sound of pages turning. Xingchen Automotive's production base has also expanded to 300,000 mu, approximately 20,000 hectares, distributed across multiple provinces nationwide. Last year, it launched 3 SUVs and 4 family sedans, covering a full range from compact to large sedans. Next, we will launch the high-end Xingchen 015 and the sports car Xingjian 001. Last year alone, Xingchen Automotive sales of various models reached 6 million units. For a new car manufacturer established just over a year ago, this is almost a perfect score. At this rate, Xingchen Automotive could become the leading car company in China this year, and even rank among the top globally. I sat in the main seat and listened, not rushing to comment. All the achievements were dazzling, but the larger the group, the easier it is for hidden problems to sprout in the corners. Next, it was Xingchen Investment Group's turn to report. Currently, it has 5 branches in China: Beijing, Southern China, Northeast China, Western China, and Coastal China. Kyoto is responsible for the core area of North China. The South focuses on high-tech industries. The Northeast injects new vitality into traditional industries, and the West is laid out around infrastructure and distinctive industries. The Western provinces have weak foundations and slow development. But with the establishment of Western Star Investment Group, the business environment has begun to change, and many places are showing strong momentum. Coastal Star Investment Group primarily engages in marine industries and foreign trade. It can be said that Star Investment Group has become one of the Jiang Group's core industries. Li Zhongfeng spoke calmly during his report. He said the group is involved in numerous industries, with over 1,000 holding companies and nearly 5,000 shareholding companies, and more than 200 of its subsidiaries have already gone public. Currently, Xingchen Investment Group's total market capitalization has exceeded 10 trillion yuan, making it the third largest company among share-listed companies in China. Hearing this, I already had a clear judgment in my mind. The Jiang Group has a total market capitalization of nearly 20 trillion yuan and 300 billion yuan in liquid funds. To be honest, you can't find many companies in the world with that much liquid capital. After everyone finished reporting, I slowly raised my head and glanced across the conference room. All the senior executives immediately picked up their pens. They all knew that what followed was the real focus of the day. The first thing I'll say is this. As the group expands, corruption is bound to emerge internally. The supervisory committee must take responsibility, and the dispatch supervisors must be rotated every 2 years. When a new person in charge takes office, they are required to audit the work of their predecessor. If no problems are found during the audit, but problems later arise, the predecessor will be held accountable, and the current person will not escape either. Xingchen Financial Development Group will draw on its audit and legal teams and send them to its branches at all levels to specifically audit finance and legal affairs, and these teams will operate separately from the supervisory personnel. I looked at everyone, my tone turning cold. Discipline and corruption are red lines. Zhang's company offers employees some of the best benefits in the world, and leaders at all levels must control their desires. Anyone who oversteps their bounds will end up in jail. All illegal gains will be confiscated, and their spouse and children will be permanently barred from working for the Jiang Zemin Group. I reminded them that there are too many people who want to join Zhang's company, with dozens or even hundreds of people competing for a single position. So the recruitment process must be clean, and there must be no such thing as a cronyism in the recruitment process. Since the recruitment process is open, it must be fair, just, and transparent. The group can establish channels for public oversight, allowing outsiders to monitor our recruitment process. All reported leads must be reviewed one by one, and any problems found must be dealt with severely. However, if anyone makes a malicious report, once verified, they must also be held accountable, because Zhang's employees cannot be wronged. After I finished saying that, the atmosphere in the meeting room became extremely tense. I paused for a moment and then continued with the second point. Xingchen Investment Group would increase its investment in the Western region. We must respond to national policies and narrow the gap between the Eastern and Western regions. However, all projects must be tailored to local conditions, combined with local realities, and invested in a planned and targeted manner. We must never blindly throw money at projects. Otherwise, the money invested will just be wasted, the people will not benefit, and the local situation will not change. Today, the Jiang Group has become a giant in China, with a total market value approaching 20 trillion yuan and employing 210,000 people. Its scale and influence have already subtly surpassed the 4 major groups. Sitting at the head of the conference room, looking at the table full of senior executives, I knew very well that at this stage of the company's development, making money was no longer the only goal. Businessmen can pursue profit, but they cannot be without conscience. Back then, the country proposed that those who get rich first should help those who are still poor to get rich later. Getting rich first was merely a means, and common prosperity was the ultimate goal. Since the Jiang Zemin Group took the lead, it must bear the responsibilities it should bear. Therefore, I propose the second point. Xingchen Investment Group will shift its focus entirely to the Western region. In line with national policies and responding to the national call, we will use investment to truly revitalize the Western economy. I immediately decided that Xingchen Investment Group would invest at least 1 trillion yuan in the Western region over the next year. Within 5 years, the total investment would be at least 10 trillion yuan, thoroughly developing the Western region. But money can't be thrown around recklessly. Every penny must be used effectively and not wasted. I don't look at slogans. I only look at the rate of return and whether a project can truly drive local development. At the same time, all projects must adhere to environmental protection red lines. Economic development is not an excuse for ecological destruction. Wherever the Jiang Group goes, it cannot leave behind a mess. I added another point. Allocate 100 billion yuan annually from the investment plan specifically for infrastructure development in the western regions to improve people's livelihoods. To get rich, build roads first. Without transportation, everything else is just empty talk. Some people, isolated by mountains, never leave their hometowns and never see the outside world. I will not allow this to continue to happen in areas where the Jiang Group has influence. As long as they want to go out, they should be able to go anywhere smoothly, see the beautiful landscapes of their motherland, and experience the customs and culture of different provinces. Their destiny should not be locked up by a bad road. Road construction is only the first step. The more important thing is to help them make money. Local governments have a responsibility, and the Jiang Group should also take the initiative to help them solve their real difficulties. At this point, I looked at Li Zhongfeng and lowered my voice. If necessary, we can appropriately release our investment plans in the West. This isn't a leak, it's a hint. I want everyone to know that the Jiang Group is going to make a large-scale entry into the West, and those companies that want to make money with the Jiang Group will naturally turn their attention there. At that time, it won't just be Jiang's investment. Many more business owners will also move to the West. Capital, people, industries, and jobs will all be stimulated, creating a true chain reaction. Li Zhongfeng nodded immediately. Chairman Jiang, I understand. I'll have the relevant departments come up with a detailed plan as soon as I get back. His notebook was already filled with my instructions. I continued to remind him that we must maintain close contact with the local government. We are proactively investing to help them solve their problems, and they should also offer support, at least by helping us eliminate any worries we may have. Li Zhongfeng respectfully agreed. Given the Jiang family's speed, he would need to come up with a plan within a day of returning, send an inspection team to the West within 3 days, and secure the first investment within a month. Then, I raised the third point, the Starry Sky Charity Foundation. Previously, the group allocated 30 billion yuan to charity every year. From now on, this will be increased to 50 billion yuan. The focus of assistance remains on infants, minors, impoverished families, and disabled elderly, but resources should be tilted towards the western regions. There, more people need help, and the need is more urgent. I also demand that the foundation's donation channels be made public and that it not rely solely on the Jiang Group. People from all walks of life who are willing to contribute are welcome to participate. But one thing must be firmly upheld. All expenditures must be transparent and open, and every penny must be used effectively. Charity is not a publicity stunt. Anyone who dares to reach out will have their hand chopped off. After saying all that, I looked around the room and my tone became serious. The fourth thing concerns the future of the group and also the global financial landscape. The conference room fell silent instantly. All the senior executives held their breath. They knew me too well. Anything I said in this tone was definitely not a trivial matter. I slowly uttered 4 words: expand overseas. Li Zhongfeng immediately reminded us that the economic sanctions imposed on us by some countries, led by the United States, have not yet ended, and it would be extremely difficult to enter these countries. I nodded. I know, so our target isn't them. The first step is Black State, Europe, Southeast Asia, and most importantly, Taiwan Province. Taiwan Province must prioritize strategic planning and aggressively acquire a number of companies to gradually control the local economic lifeline. Once the economic lifeline is in hand, many things will become much simpler. But the existing funds alone cannot support such a large-scale operation. I requested the investment department to mobilize funds and re-enter the global stock market, especially the US and European markets. I need to keep them too busy to interfere with our overseas expansion. On the surface, the Jiang Group and HC Investment Group remain competitors. This relationship must not be exposed. Next, I mentioned Xingqian Security Group. Overseas expansion requires its own armed security force. Relying solely on retired soldiers isn't enough for now, but that's the only option for the time being. We can follow the Night Sky Island model to gradually subdue local forces and build a true protective network for the group's overseas operations. Everyone here knows the secret, but no one dares to leak it. Finally, I decided on the initial funding, 500 billion. 200 billion will be allocated to Taiwan, 100 billion to Montenegro, 100 billion to Europe, and 100 billion to Southeast Asia. At the same time, Longshan International Group was established with an investment of 500 billion yuan to take full responsibility for overseas business. Longshan Foreign Trade Company was also established to handle the global sales of domestic products. Longshan Security Company was established to be responsible for the group's overseas security. Longshan Construction Company was established to be responsible for overseas infrastructure projects. Longshan Automobile Sales Company was established to specialize in the production and sales of overseas versions of the Star Series automobiles. Chapter 224 Another Action-Oriented Person. I have proposed so many measures with only one purpose: to enable the Jiang Group to expand beyond China and go overseas, becoming a truly international corporation. But the first stop must not be the United States. It may seem like there are opportunities everywhere, but in reality, it's full of pitfalls. I won't gamble with the Jiang Group's future until I have absolute certainty. The failure of Xingshan International Investment Group has taught me a painful lesson. With our current strength, trying to stand up to a country that claims to be a world hegemon is simply wishful thinking. A single policy from them can bankrupt us, and all our hard work can vanish in an instant. Therefore, this time when we go overseas, we must be careful with every step and use every penny wisely. In the meeting room, everyone nodded in silence. I knew they were seething with anger. Why should a normally operating company be sanctioned just because it didn't give away its technology for free? So-called freedom and rules become a joke in the face of self-interest. Since a head-on confrontation is not worthwhile, let's try a different approach and play our game in ways that others cannot understand. Subsequently, I adjusted the personnel arrangements of the Jiang Group, transferring a group of key personnel to the newly established Longshan International Group to first build up the overseas team. In less than 3 days, Longshan International Group completed its registration. The registered office is located in the Virgin Islands, with a registered capital of 500 billion yuan. The legal representative is Fu Qinning, a former senior executive at Xingshan Investment, who is highly capable and reliable. I didn't choose the Cayman Islands, but rather the Virgin Islands. The reason is simple: shareholder and director information is not publicly available, offering greater privacy, lower tax-free costs, and making it suitable for concealing the true intentions behind the scheme. Longshan International Group's domestic branch is temporarily located on Haitan Island in Pingtan, Fujian Province. It's only a little over 100 kilometers from Taiwan, boasting a unique location and stunning scenery, making it a natural springboard for expansion. Fu Qinning is a man of action. He directly rented a dozen-story office building and signed an investment agreement with Fujian Province, initially investing 10 billion yuan to develop Pingtan, with a planned investment of at least 50 billion yuan over the next 3 years. For Pingtan, whose annual GDP is only over 30 billion yuan, an investment of 50 billion yuan is an astronomical figure. When the news spread, local leaders were excited, and the people saw new opportunities. Those young people who were originally planning to go out to work are now hesitant about whether to stay. They know that once the project is truly implemented, the fate of Pingtan may be completely rewritten. Longshan International acted with remarkable speed, producing a detailed plan in just 2 days. The plan focused on developing tourism, fisheries, trade, and logistics, while also strengthening economic ties with Taiwan to pave the way for its expansion into the region. Soon, Fu Qinning personally led a team to Taiwan for an inspection. Because it was ostensibly an international investment, the other party received them with great ceremony, completely unaware of the true purpose behind this investment. After the inspection, Fu Qinning decided to establish a branch office in Taipei City, Taiwan, with a planned investment of 200 billion NT dollars in the near future, equivalent to over 900 billion NT dollars. On the surface, it's about making money. Behind the scenes, it's about strategic maneuvering. Before he left, he met with me alone and shared his thoughts. I didn't say much, just told him to go for it, and that I would take responsibility if anything went wrong. Therefore, the first batch of 30 billion yuan went directly to Inmin. Fu Qinning's analysis was very clear. To start with Inmin, one must first grasp its economic lifeline. Inmin's biggest sources of revenue are tourism and Inmin Kaoyong liquor. Controlling these two sectors is equivalent to cutting off the cash flow source, making further expansion a natural next step. He first established Longshan Tourism Company and signed a strategic agreement with Fujian province to lock in the flow of mainland tourists. Then he acquired most of the hotels, guest houses and restaurants in Inmin and obtained the agency rights for scenic spots and duty-free shops. In just 2 days, he poured billions of dollars into the tourism industry in Inmin, and he practically took control of it. To be on the safe side, he also invested in Shuimin Wharf, acquiring the maximum permitted 30% stake. Next, he aggressively acquired Inmin Kaoyong Liquor Distillery, signed sales agreements with several major Chinese internet platforms, and launched Inmin Kaoyong Liquor into the mainland market. He also introduced customized liquor with a fusion concept. In less than a week, Fu Qinning had become the de facto head of Inmin. Local officials dared not offend him easily, because a single word from him could bring Inmin's economy to a standstill. However, the Taiwanese side hasn't noticed anything unusual yet. They simply assume that Longshan International is there to make money. After all, with billions of dollars in cash being poured into the bank, who would doubt the motives of this benefactor? In Jiangqing's office, I finished reviewing the report Fu Qinning had sent, and I was quite satisfied. In less than half a month, he had taken control of Inmin economy. The next step was to deepen his infiltration. I put down the documents and immediately gave the order, telling Fu Qinning not to worry and to continue working without hesitation. The Jiang Group's funds and the cooperation of Fujian province would provide him with a safety net. After receiving my assurance, Fu Qinning was completely relieved. He immediately summoned his senior executives to discuss warehousing and cold chain logistics projects with Inmin and planned to invest another 3 billion yuan to build a large center. His goal was clear: to sell Inmin's seafood and agricultural products to the mainland, further crippling Inmin's logistics and trade. He looked at the crowd at the end, his tone turning serious, and added, Chapter 225. The wedding date has been set. Fu Qinning quickly finalized his plans for Inmin to cooperate with the Port Authority and the water company to secure water supply operations, pipeline maintenance, and water-saving projects, and then launch Longshan's own bottled water brand. Next, he planned to invest another billion yuan in photovoltaic power generation and energy storage projects to seize the Inmin power market with lower electricity prices. Once he controlled this vital gateway to people's livelihoods, Inmin would be slowly infiltrated by Longshan. The medical sector cannot be overlooked either. The company will acquire local hospitals, build health and wellness centers and medical examination centers, and bind the medical and elderly care needs of Inmin residents to Longshan International Group. Fu Qinning's goal was straightforward. Within a year, to ensure that the people of Inmin's daily lives were inseparable from the name Longshan. The plan was finalized. All that remained was time and execution. As the spring festival approaches, red lanterns adorn the streets and alleys of Jiangqing, and the festive atmosphere grows stronger. As usual, Zhang's group is giving employees an early New Year's holiday, with over 20 days of paid leave and 5 times the normal pay for those on duty. The company has given out billions in year-end bonuses and New Year's bonuses alone. Outsiders are envious, but for Zhang's employees, this is the most anticipated day of the year. My trip back to Jiangsheng was originally intended to spend a reunion year with my mother and Mu Wanbing. But besides the new year, there's another truly important life event. My wedding date with Mu Wanbing has been set. This year, Mu Wanbing officially graduated, and she's currently busy with her graduation thesis. However, her company is thriving and preparing for an IPO, so Tsinghua and Peking University have no reason to prevent her from graduating. Moreover, she has another identity, my future wife. Once this identity is revealed, many things become logical and reasonable, and no one would want to cause trouble at a time like this. Originally, I wanted to wait until she graduated to hold the wedding, but the affairs of Night Sky Island, HC Investment Group, and Longshan International Group all fell on my shoulders, and I may not be able to return to China for a long time afterward. Since we were already engaged, and everyone in the upper echelons knew, there was no problem with moving the wedding forward. So we set the date for the 8th day of the Lunar New Year, an auspicious day. As for wedding photos, for ordinary people, it involves making an appointment, scheduling a time slot, and waiting for the finished photos. But when it comes to my position, no one dares to make me wait in line. Dozens of professional retouchers work overnight to get the photos ready very quickly. On New Year's Eve, the Jiang family and the Mu family celebrated together. Liu Rian also stayed at the Jiang family's house, planning to return on New Year's Day. The villa was bustling with activity, with nearly 100 people including security. This is the second Lunar New Year's Eve I've spent with Mu Wanbing. The first one was at the Mu family home. Jiang Qingxua hadn't returned yet, and the Jiang family home was empty except for me and a few bodyguards. After the family reunion dinner, I went to my study alone and started making phone calls to wish everyone a happy new year. The first call I made was to Lin Hai. His official appointment had been finalized, and he was now in a higher position. After the call connected, I spoke first. "Uncle Lin, Happy New Year." Lin Hai responded with a smile, and added that he would definitely give me a big red envelope when I got married in a few days. He spoke with a touch of emotion, saying that when he first met me, I looked quite young. But now, I've come this far and am about to start a family. Lin Hai reminded me that after I have a family, I shouldn't always focus all my energy on work, but should also take care of my family. I agreed, but I knew in my heart that his words carried a lot of weight. After hanging up the phone, I dialed Feng Yuan's number again, wanting to wish Mr. Song a happy new year. Although I had Mr. Song's private number, I couldn't disregard the proper etiquette and disturb him without permission. Soon, Old Song's voice came through the receiver. He smiled and said, "I told you long ago that I could call the private number directly without having Feng Yuan report to me." I felt a little embarrassed and just said I was afraid he was too busy. But Old Song laughed and said that he had been busy all year and deserved a few days off during the new year. Then, he suddenly brought up my wedding. He said he heard I was getting married in a few days and that this old man had to attend. Hearing this, I was suddenly struck by a jolt. I knew better than anyone what kind of person Old Song was. When he speaks, it's never just a casual remark. My wedding was instantly elevated in significance because of his presence. That kind of prestige is something many people would kill for. I quickly thanked him, but after a few polite words, Old Song chuckled and scolded me for being glib. We chatted for another half hour, and I also reported to him on Fu Kinning's situation at Yinmen. After listening to my advice, Mr. Song gave me a few suggestions. By the time the call was completely finished, it was already 11:50, with only 10 minutes left until the first day of the Lunar New Year. I took Mu Wanbing's hand and walked up to the villa's rooftop. The cold wind blew against our faces, and she instinctively moved closer to me. I whispered to her, "Wanbing, I've prepared a gift for you." The next second, the clock struck 12. Suddenly, a loud bang came from afar, and countless fireworks shot into the night sky, blooming into dazzling patterns, like a rain of fireworks covering the entire city of Jiangxing. That was a gift I gave to Mu Wanbing, and also a New Year's spectacle that the whole of Jiangxing could see. I hugged her tightly, and no matter how cold the winter wind was, it couldn't blow away the warmth of this moment. Back in our room that night, we embraced until dawn. Finally, it was only after Mu Wanbing, with red eyes, begged for mercy that this New Year's Eve intimacy finally came to an end. In the blink of an eye, it was already the 8th day of the Lunar New Year. The news of my marriage to Mu Wanbing was like a thunderbolt, waking up the entire internet. I knew my every move would be watched, but the wedding still exceeded my expectations. The media, social media, and bloggers all rushed to Jiangxing, just wanting to get the first look. The area outside the Jiang family villa was already completely surrounded, but they couldn't even get within 100 meters because it was under the dual protection of the police and the National Security Bureau. Anyone who dared to trespass would be immediately taken away for education. Several daring individuals attempted to sneak in, but were apprehended as soon as they got close. Although they were eventually released, it made it clear to everyone that no one could cross the line at today's wedding. Inside the villa, however, was a completely different world. Everyone was busy, and a top-notch wedding team had transformed the courtyard into a sea of flowers, with pink roses filling the view, creating a festive atmosphere like a dream. The wedding car convoy was even more extravagant, with 99 Hongqi Golden Sunflower State gift cars lined up in a long queue, each worth nearly 10 million yuan, and the entire convoy totaling 1 billion yuan. These cars weren't rented, they were all bought. But for me now, that amount of money is nothing. What I care more about is that Chinese weddings should use our own brands. The welcome vehicles were all replaced with Xingshan Motors, since these are cars produced by their own company. With so many media present today, it's a good opportunity to advertise the brand, adding to the joy. I didn't invite too many people, but almost all the business owners who had cooperated with the Jiang Group were there. They all knew that although I had stepped down as chairman, the roots of the Jiang Group were still in my hands. The group's senior management is still the same group of veterans who followed me to build the empire back then. The new chairman didn't change the organizational structure after taking office. So many things don't need to be said explicitly. Everyone understands. Many government leaders also came, including those from Jiangdong Province, Kyoto City, and some nearby areas. The red envelopes were just symbolic amounts of a few hundred yuan. The rules still had to be followed. They were seated in a private room, which was both inconspicuous and prevented the atmosphere from becoming too tense, since today was my wedding, not some grand event. Finally, under everyone's gaze, I walked onto the stage in a black custom-made suit, and at that moment, all eyes were on me. I couldn't suppress the smile on my face, because today, I'm finally going to marry the woman I love. After several years of dating, we've finally reached a happy ending. Standing next to me is CTV's top host, whose presence and stage presence are very steady. But today, everyone's focus is not on him, but on me and the door that has not yet been opened. The host's voice resounded throughout the venue. He said that what everyone witnessed today was a kind of happiness, a love that didn't need many sweet words, but could be understood with just a glance. He took our story back to the class reunion after the college entrance exam, saying that the seemingly ordinary day became the place where my relationship with Mu Wanbing truly began. As I listened to those words, her image filled my mind, from my youth to now, from initial attraction to unwavering commitment. Suddenly, I felt that all the waiting had been worthwhile. The MC handed me the microphone, smiled, and asked me if I had anything to say to the bride, who was behind that door. I looked down at the audience, then back at the door. Suddenly, all the words I had prepared seemed unimportant. 1,000 words rushed to my lips, but in the end, only the simplest 5 words remained. I whispered, "Wanbing, I love you." As soon as I finished speaking, a wave of applause swept through the room. I didn't say anything else, because those 5 words contained all the emotions I had accumulated over the years. The host took the microphone, his voice softening. He said that the simplest words often contain the deepest feelings, and all his words could be summed up in one sentence. I love you. Then, he pointed to the door and announced loudly, "Let us welcome the most beautiful bride of the day, Mu Wanbing." The next second, the doors slowly opened, and Mu Wanbing, dressed in a wedding gown, walked gracefully into the venue as music began to play. Just as the host announced the invitation for the officiant to come on stage, I took the microphone, glanced at the entire audience, and lowered my voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, the officiant has a special status. Please leave the venue first. Filming and recording are prohibited on site. Please put away all electronic devices for the time being." As soon as he finished speaking, the banquet hall fell silent. Everyone was stunned, their eyes filled with doubt. The person I treated with such seriousness must be someone of extraordinary status. The staff quickly ushered the reporters outside, and no one dared to utter a single complaint. "They were already being very generous of me by being allowed in to film the wedding today," I said. "The news has been trending all over the internet for ages. Even the trending topics that a certain singer bought for releasing an album during the Lunar New Year have been completely overshadowed by my wedding news. He's probably crying his eyes out in the bathroom now." The guests put away their phones, unaware that the security in the banquet hall had been increased several times over, with burly men standing in the corners, some with bulging waists. I walked towards the side door, and everyone's eyes followed me, until the old man appeared. The whole room seemed to be muted, and even breathing became quiet. Old Song looked at me with a smile. "Today is your day, kid. Instead of being on stage with your wife, you came down to greet me?" I quickly stepped forward, feeling a little excited. "You were the officiant at the wedding, so it's only right that I come to pick you up." The moment Old Master Song appeared, the entire wedding was elevated in status. In Kyoto, it was considered a great honor to be invited to a wedding banquet by the younger generation of families, let alone have him officiate. But today, he came, and he even personally officiated at my and Mu Wanbing's wedding. Everyone's gaze towards me changed. They finally understood the true significance of this wedding. Old Song picked up the microphone, his gentle gaze falling on Mu Wanbing and me. Wanbing already knew who the officiant was, but seeing him in person still made her palms burn with nervousness. She greeted him respectfully. "Hello, Mr. Song." Mr. Song smiled and nodded. "Not bad. She's a pretty young girl. This young man has always had good taste. It's his good fortune to have married you." These words made Wanbing blush slightly. I stood beside her, feeling inexplicably at ease, because this recognition was more precious than any blessing. Old Song turned to look at the audience, his voice not loud, but clearly heard by everyone. "Today, we are all witnessing the happiness of the newlyweds." He looked at me again, his tone becoming more serious. "I've watched Xiaochen grow up. He has the vigor of youth, drive, and the courage to think, act, and take risks." The room was eerily quiet. Everyone could tell that Mr. Song's evaluation of me was not just polite talk. He genuinely regarded me as a junior. Old Song patted my shoulder. "In the days to come, never forget your original aspirations, show the spirit of Chinese men, create new achievements, and let the world see the heroism of China." I gripped the microphone tightly, my chest burning like fire. "Please rest assured, Elder Song, and please rest assured, the nation, I, Jiang Chun, will dedicate my life to the cause of China's renewed prosperity." A thunderous applause erupted, igniting the entire banquet hall. But the next second, Old Master Song changed the subject. "Of course, you two should also contribute to the next generation of China." I was stunned for a moment, and Wanbing's face instantly turned red to the roots of her ears. I can keep my composure in any situation, but this kind of online pressure to have children is something you can't escape. After the wedding ceremony, Lin Hai and the others accompanied Old Master Song to the most secluded private room. The high-ranking officials also went in one after another to offer their greetings and report on their work, almost turning the wedding banquet into an office meeting. After the ceremony, I took Wanbing, accompanied by my mother Jiang Qingxue and Mu's parents, and began toasting. The first stop was naturally the private room where Old Master Song was. My mother remained relatively calm, but Mu's parents were so excited that their hands were trembling slightly. To them, Old Master Song was someone they only saw on television, but now he was sitting right in front of them. Old Song looked at Wanbing and me and said with a smile, "You have to take what I just said seriously. You have such good genes, we can't let them go to waste. You should strive to become the new generation of standard bearers." Wanbing kept her head down and didn't speak. I picked up my wine glass and quickly continued, "Don't worry, Mr. Song. When that time comes, we'll still need you to name the child." Old Master Song immediately laughed. "All right, it's settled then." Everyone in the private room understood that to have Old Master Song officiate the wedding and to have him bestow a name upon them was an honor that probably only they could receive. Then, Old Master Song looked at the Mu family parents and said, "You have raised a wonderful daughter. She has excellent taste, is outstanding, intelligent, and capable. If she inherits their good qualities, I would like to meet her as soon as possible." The Mu family parents were so overwhelmed by the praise that their hearts raced, and they almost dropped their wine glasses. That kind of glory was something they would remember for a lifetime. Finally, Old Song's gaze fell on my mother, his eyes deepening. "Qingxue, you have given birth to a good son. Xiao Chan is very much like you when you were young." He paused for a moment, then said, "You did the right thing back then. Otherwise, you wouldn't have such an outstanding son today." My mother ran away from her arranged marriage and eloped with my father, causing quite a stir in the secluded family circles of Kyoto. Old Song's words were tantamount to sealing the fate of that past event. The mother remained calm and said softly, "Mr. Song, what happened back then is in the past. Now I understand that living well in the present is more important than anything else." She looked at me, then at Wanbing, her eyes filled with relief. Now that she has me as her son, such a wonderful daughter-in-law, and will have grandchildren in the future, she has no regrets in life. Learning to let go is the best gift you can give yourself. The news of my marriage to Mu Wanbing stayed on the trending topics list for several days. Millions of netizens were discussing the wedding, and countless girls were green with envy. But as much as they envied, they also knew that not just anyone could marry into a wealthy family. After the Lunar New Year, businesses across the country gradually resumed operations. Workers need to eat, businesses need to function, and society needs to return to order. However, it's rare to see a company like Zhang's Group that closed for nearly a month. Even staying to work overtime requires multiple levels of approval. When I was still the chairman of Zhang's Group, some senior executives suggested encouraging overtime, saying it was the norm in the industry. I rejected it on the spot because, in my eyes, most overtime was a waste of time and energy. Work that could be done in 8 hours was dragged out to 12 hours, which was a waste of the employees' lives. Employees aren't machines, and time isn't free. If you make people work overtime every day, who's going to spend their money? They earn a salary but have no time to spend it. Their lives are either at the company or on their way there. In the end, all their money might end up in the hospital. This kind of boss mentality is disgusting. Therefore, Zhang's Group never encourages overtime. If an employee really wants to work overtime, they must write down the reason, have it signed by the team leader, the department manager, and the branch general manager, and then submit it to the head office's human resources department for filing. The process is so complicated that it makes people want to give up. Once the application is approved, you get triple pay for the day you work overtime, plus a day off in lieu of workday. In other words, you get paid for 3 days' work for 1 day of overtime, plus a day off in lieu of workday. This is the kind of overtime system that working people really want. That day, I accompanied Mu Wanbing to Kyoto. She had work to do at Shinbing Group, so I accompanied her to relax and also to think about my next steps. The name Shinbing Group was taken from both my and her names. Today, Shinbing Group is no longer the small company it once was, but a listed group with a market value of nearly 100 billion yuan. Its subsidiaries include Qingyan Cosmetics, Shinbing Technology, and Bingxian Apparel. Last year, its output value exceeded 50 billion yuan, its net profit exceeded 10 billion yuan, and it paid several billion yuan in taxes. Mu Wanbing holds 34% of the group's shares. I hold 23.7%, and Mu's parents also have shares. Xingchen Investment Group is a nominal shareholder. However, the real control is entirely in Mu Wanbing's hands, because the shares held by Mu's parents and me are all held by her on our behalf. Mu Wanbing went to a meeting with senior executives, and since I had nothing to do, I wandered around the headquarters building. The Shinbing Group has a high percentage of female employees, and the entire office area was filled with a subtle fragrance. As soon as I appeared, all eyes immediately turned to me. Someone exclaimed in a low voice, saying that it was the legendary Chairman Jiang. Some people complimented me on my looks, while others envied Mu Wanbing for being able to hold me while sleeping every day. I almost couldn't hold back my laughter, so I could only smile and wave at them, asking everyone if they were getting used to the new job. A group of employees immediately answered in unison, "It's a habit." Seeing that the atmosphere was good, I said, Shinbing Group's success today is inseparable from everyone's hard work. As a nominal director, I don't have much to say, so I'll just give everyone a New Year's red envelope personally. I beckoned Fu Ning over and told him to give every employee of Shinbing Group a 1,000 yuan red envelope, with the money coming from my personal account. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried like a thunderclap throughout the office area, leaving everyone stunned. The headquarters building alone has over 1,000 employees, and including the various branches and factories, the group has nearly 10,000 employees. 1,000 per person, that's over 10 million. They finally witnessed firsthand what Jiang Qin's extravagant spending truly meant. The next second, the office area erupted in cheers. Someone shouted that Chairman Jiang was magnanimous, someone else said that from today onwards I was her idol, and someone was so excited that they shouted that they wanted to have my babies. When I heard this, my scalp tingled, and I turned and ran. A burst of laughter erupted behind me, and the entire office area seemed to explode. I had only intended to send a red envelope to build rapport, but I was almost overwhelmed by the enthusiasm of these employees. The employees of Shinbing Group are truly something else. I retreated to the chairman's office, finally finding some peace and quiet, and began to ponder the matters of Night Sky Island and Kai Estate. Last year, HC Investment Group had performed quite well, but to support an army in my plans, that amount of money would likely barely make a ripple. I've roughly calculated that the initial investment in Kaya alone is close to 10 billion. War is inherently expensive, especially since I don't just want to occupy it. I also want to develop it and completely control it. The future investment will be at least 500 billion. HC Investment Group earns over 400 billion yuan in profit annually, but that money can't all be poured into Kaya State. Therefore, HC must make money like crazy this year. I sat at Mu Wanbing's desk and started writing the expansion plan. The first point was to increase revenue and reduce expenditure. The key to the so-called increasing revenue and reducing expenditure is never about reducing expenditure, but about increasing revenue. I've always believed that money isn't saved, it's earned through hard work. No matter how much someone earns a monthly salary of 3,000 saves, they won't build a future. The real solution is to find a way to turn 3,000 into 30,000. Everyone understands this principle, but the difficulty lies in having the courage to burn one's bridges and the drive to fight and take risks. To open source, I need to find a more stable and profitable approach. But after much thought, I can't find a faster way than the stock market. But the stock market is too dangerous. Large inflows and outflows of funds will inevitably alarm global financial giants. If they join forces to attack, HC Investment Group will not be able to withstand it, and the Jiang Group may also be torn to pieces. Established capitalists never flaunt their wealth. Take the Rothschild family, for example. They appear low-key, but the capital they control is terrifyingly vast, including many top wineries. My current strength is far from being able to sweep everything aside. The same goes for those reclusive families in China. They may have trillions of dollars on the surface, but who knows how many trump cards they might be hiding in secret. The last time I was able to escape unscathed from the Bai family, I caught them completely off guard. If we wait for them to reach a consensus and mobilize all their resources, even if the Jiang Group survives, it will pay a heavy price. Therefore, raising large sums of money from the stock market is definitely not the best option. Just as I was frowning and deep in thought, a place suddenly flashed into my mind. Kaya. The area is rich in mineral resources. The Machi mining area was once one of the world's largest tungsten mines, with astonishing proven tungsten reserves, and also contained associated tin deposits, but production was halted for a long time due to war. Besides these, there's antimony, ore, marble, silver, lead, zinc, copper, coal, and iron, everything imaginable. If it can be mined, it's a gold mine that keeps gushing money. Kaya State also boasts the Lapida Hydropower Station, the oldest and largest hydropower station in Mindy, which generates a quarter of the country's electricity. The Salween River tributaries flow through the region, offering equally significant hydropower potential. The forest resources are also considerable, with teak, rosewood, paddock, and pine trees everywhere. Unfortunately, the situation here is too chaotic, and the resources have long been firmly held in the hands of various forces. The Lapida Hydroelectric Power Station is controlled by the Myanmar military because whoever controls it holds the reins of Myanmar's electricity supply. A power outage could plunge the entire country into chaos. The Machi mining area has been a protracted battleground, with the KMPP and the KY militia taking turns occupying it. The antimony mining belt from Laiku to Konsar is the core territory of the KMPP, characterized by its high mountains, treacherous roads, and strategic importance. Although the Night Air Force captured Loikyu, its control was still limited to the city and surrounding towns. To truly control Kaya State, it was necessary to seize control of all its vital resources. I quickly finalized the next phase of the plan. First, the Night Air Force would seize the antimony belt from Legu to Kongsa and acquire high-grade antimony resources. This move will inevitably lead to war with the KMPP and will also provoke a counterattack from other armed groups. However, in the last Battle of Legu, the Night Air Force severely damaged thousands of their men, enough to make them suffer for a long time. Now that the Night soldiers' strength has expanded, they are qualified to confront them head-on. Second, they should short-sell the entire country to damage its economy and then buy up industrial resources at rock-bottom prices. This would both generate revenue and divert Myanmar's attention, preventing them from focusing on Kaya. Of course, This requires massive amounts of capital. Hundreds of billions are just the starting point. Third, develop hydroelectric power stations. Gradually penetrate the Lapida hydroelectric station, and then build large-scale hydroelectric power stations on the tributaries of the Salween River to solve the electricity problem for the people and incidentally control most of the hydroelectric resources in the region. Fourth, control border crossings. 5th through 10th, I also wrote them down one by one. Minerals, transportation, finance, armed forces, and people's livelihoods must all be incorporated into the Night Air Force system. Once these 10 plans are completed, Kaya will be completely under my control. However, it will take at least 1 or 2 years to proceed normally, and time is what I lack most right now. Since there's not enough time, let's use money to splurge. Fortunately, these measures themselves can generate enormous wealth, and I'll use that money to control Kaya. By the time I finished writing the proposal, it was already dark. The setting sun shone into the office, and Mu Wanbing was sitting on the sofa, quietly watching me with a look of infatuation in her eyes. I looked up and asked her if she was tired. She said she had rested for a few days, but there was a lot of work piling up at the company, which was time-consuming to handle, but she could still manage. She then mentioned that I gave each of the group's employees a red envelope, 1,000 yuan. I smiled and said that as the nominal chairman, I should at least show some appreciation. Mu Wanbing teased me, saying she almost forgot I was the richest man in China. I walked over and hugged her, whispering to her, "What's mine is hers." She said no, but her face turned red. I didn't tease her anymore, and took her out of the office to eat first, and then go back to enjoy our night together. 2 days later, that long-lost, cold voice finally rang in my mind. Ding! Congratulations, host. Your assets have exceeded 20 trillion. The host is rewarded with controlled nuclear fusion technology. I froze instantly, even my breathing slowed. Controlled nuclear fusion, that's the ultimate energy technology that countless countries have been researching for decades without truly mastering. Known as the artificial sun, it can provide clean, safe, and nearly inexhaustible energy, and is humanity's greatest hope for solving the energy crisis. But currently, with the global technological level, we are still far from achieving truly controlled nuclear fusion. I never expected that the system would directly reward us with controlled nuclear fusion technology this time. Controlled nuclear fusion is a technology that can truly change the world. Once put into use, humanity will have a continuous supply of clean energy and will no longer be held hostage by energy shortages. Countries around the world are investing astronomical sums to crack this tough nut. China has also made breakthroughs, but it's still one crucial step away from true commercial application. What the system has given me, however, is a complete set of technologies. I stared at the document, my breathing becoming heavy. To be able to copy it and use it immediately, a century ahead of the world, this wasn't just an ordinary reward. It was a trump card capable of rewriting the course of human civilization. If a nuclear power plant were built on Night Sky Island, I would have unlimited electricity. If used on a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, it would be a near-perpetual motion sea behemoth. The so-called range anxiety would become a joke. If Starship Motors could also utilize this technology, cars would no longer be consumables. Even the day when humanity ventures into space and leaves the Milky Way would no longer be just a fantasy. I suppressed my surging emotions, immediately extracted the technical information, copied it to a USB drive, and then dialed Mr. Song's private number. At the same time, I asked Fu Ning to prepare the car. I needed to go to Kowloon Pavilion immediately. The call connected quickly, but it was Feng Yuan's voice that came through. He said that Elder Song was in a meeting. I didn't beat around the bush and told him directly that I had something extremely important to discuss, and that I would be at Kowloon Pavilion in half an hour. Feng Yuan sensed something was off about my tone and, without delay, turned and went into the conference room. It was filled with smoke, and the 9 elders were discussing state affairs. Anyone who dared to barge in could face serious consequences. But he still went in, because he knew I never dialed Old Song's private number lightly. Unless the matter was so important that it couldn't wait, or even so important that it would change the future of the country. Old Song didn't blame Feng Yuan, but after listening to the report, his brows furrowed slightly. He knew my habits, and he also knew that if I rushed here, It couldn't be just a simple business matter. He immediately suggested suspending the meeting and asking me to go directly to the conference room to report. The elders did not object, and so, the 9 most core people in the entire Huaxia sat in the conference room waiting for me, a young man. Half an hour later, I entered the elders' meeting room, led by Feng Yuan. The moment I pushed open the door, all eyes were on me. I first greeted them respectfully, then apologized in a low voice for disturbing their meeting. I then took out the USB drive, placed it in the center of the round table, and began to speak as calmly as possible. I have recently acquired some technology that I would like to donate to the country free of charge. The elders' expressions shifted. Without pausing, I stated the key point directly. This contains controlled nuclear fusion technology, a complete and readily usable controlled nuclear fusion technology. The conference room fell silent instantly. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the USB drive, as if it were a bomb that could detonate at any moment. Old Song slowly looked at me, his voice very low. Comrade Xiao Jiang, you said you have cracked the controlled nuclear fusion technology? I nodded. That's right. That's why I came to report as soon as possible and apologize for interrupting the elders' meeting. Everyone gasped. They knew all too well the significance of this technology. China had invested thousands of researchers, spent years, and poured hundreds of billions of yuan into it, yet it had only achieved a partial breakthrough. The real challenge isn't something money can solve. Materials, constraints, stable operation, each hurdle is like an insurmountable barrier. But now, I've presented them with the complete answer. An elder in charge of the Academy of Sciences spoke in a deep voice, saying that the matter was of great importance. It wasn't that he didn't trust me, but that we had to immediately gather professionals to verify the authenticity of the technology and confirm whether it was a complete breakthrough or just a stage achievement. Old Song nodded and immediately ordered the initiation of the highest level of confidentiality procedures. All attendees signed the highest level of confidentiality document, and a high-level meeting was to be held an hour later to first confirm the technology and then discuss the follow-up. Afterwards, Mr. Song asked me to go to his office with him. After closing the door, he and I sat on the sofa, his expression more solemn than ever before, his gaze seeming to penetrate into my heart. Xiao Chun, do you know what controlled nuclear fusion technology represents? Old Song asked me in a low voice. I nodded seriously. I know. Old Song looked at me and said, word by word, the commercial value of this technology exceeds 1 trillion. Once it is put into practice, it can easily create another Jiang group, or even have a higher market value. Are you still willing to hand it over to the country for free? Chapter 231. You don't recognize him? I'm willing. I looked at Old Song, my tone unwavering. In truth, the moment he asked the question, I already knew the answer. My heart has always stood with China. Old Song patted my shoulder, his voice soft, yet it felt like a boulder had fallen into my heart. He said that China will never fail to reward its heroes, nor will it ever forget the contributions of each and every one of them. An hour later, I followed them into the top-secret conference room. The president of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the person in charge of the controlled nuclear fusion project widened their eyes instantly upon seeing the documents. The latter immediately pulled out his notebook and began frantically performing calculations. The meeting room was eerily quiet. Everyone was waiting for the results. For 2 hours, no one dared to disturb them. The project manager grew increasingly excited with each calculation, muttering to himself, so that's the key point. After reviewing the first phase of the plan, the president of the Chinese Academy of Sciences looked up sharply, his voice trembling. He said that this was the complete controlled nuclear fusion technology, and with this information, it could be implemented within 3 months. The atmosphere in the conference room changed instantly after those words were spoken. Everyone understood that this was no ordinary scientific breakthrough. It was a key that could reshape the world's energy landscape. Once China masters controlled nuclear fusion, it can break free from Western energy constraints. Its future energy lifeline will no longer depend on anyone else. The dean's eyes reddened as he finished speaking. He suddenly looked at Professor Song and said urgently that he wanted to meet the person who developed this technology. He even said that if the person was willing to go to the Chinese Academy of Sciences, he could give up his position as president. Old Song smiled, glanced at me in the corner, and said, Isn't the person right here? Only then did the president of the Chinese Academy of Sciences notice me, his face showing undisguised shock. He initially thought I was a meeting recorder, never expecting that the technology that was causing headaches for the world's top research teams was actually something a young man like me had come up with. Young man, would you be interested in working at the Chinese Academy of Sciences? His question caught me off guard. It wasn't that I didn't want to answer, but the invitation was too sudden. Old Song whispered a reminder to him. Academician Wang, this corner of the wall isn't easy to dig up. Only then did Academician Wang realize his lapse in composure, but his eyes were still filled with resentment. Another elder smiled and asked him, Academician Wang, do you know who he is? Academician Wang shook his head, looking somewhat embarrassed. It was normal for him to be so engrossed in scientific research and oblivious to the outside world. The elder continued, I am the former chairman of the Jiang Group. I founded both the Star Academy of Sciences and the Star Talent Center. I am the richest man in China, and I would rank among the world's richest people. After listening, Academician Wang fell silent. He finally understood that it was almost impossible for him to recruit me to the Chinese Academy of Sciences. But the regret in his eyes was even greater than before. I sensed his thoughts and whispered to him, Dean Wang, don't worry. Even if I don't go to the Chinese Academy of Sciences, I will definitely contribute to China's scientific research. He sighed and had no choice but to give up. After Academician Wang and the others left, only a few elders and I remained in the conference room. Elder Song looked around and finally looked at me, saying that we would discuss the application of the technology and the rewards for those who had made contributions. The first task was quickly decided. The controlled nuclear fusion technology was handed over to the original project team for implementation with full national support. Funds and personnel were provided as needed, and it had to be put into use as quickly as possible. No one objected. It passed unanimously. Everyone knows that the international situation is currently unstable, and with this technology, China has gained a real trump card in the energy sector. Next came my reward. I had given the technology to the nation free of charge, but China has always rewarded merit and punished wrongdoing. Such a contribution could not be simply acknowledged with a word of thanks. Someone suggested awarding me the highest scientific achievement, the National Medal of Honor. No sooner had the words left their mouth than Professor Shao interjected, saying that wasn't enough. Controlled nuclear fusion, if applied to the military field, would have even greater significance. Nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and submarines would possess significantly greater power, even achieving near unlimited range. This would elevate China's military strength to a new level. Elder Shao suggested awarding me the rank of Lieutenant General. At the same time, he proposed awarding me the Special Merit Medal of the Army, Navy, and Air Force. This proposal surprised even me. In peacetime, a Special Merit Medal has been a rare occurrence for decades, let alone a Special Merit Medal of the three services. Then someone else suggested that since the military had given me such a high level of treatment, my administrative benefits shouldn't be low either. So, I was proposed to be promoted to vice ministerial level, enjoying vice ministerial benefits, but without being granted any real power. I'm only in my early 20s, and this level of expertise is practically unheard of nationwide. Yet, there wasn't a hint of a joke on their faces, because the value behind this technology was enough to support all of this. Finally, someone wanted to mention the bonus, but stopped halfway through. They suddenly remembered that I didn't actually need the money. The numbers in my account were long gone, just a string of symbols to me. What I miss most are the days when my parents gave me living expenses while I was in school. Back then, I was carefree and had someone to rely on. But now, I've become the support of tens of thousands of people. Finally, the elders finalized the details, and my rewards were announced one by one. He will receive a National Hero Medal, enjoy the same benefits as an academician for life, receive a one-time cash reward of 30 million yuan, be awarded the Special Merit Medal of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, be promoted to the rank of Lieutenant General of the three services, and have his administrative rank raised to the vice ministerial level. I know very well that these are not just simple honors, but rather a reflection of the nation's attitude towards controlled nuclear fusion technology. In particular, the Special Merit Medal of the three services was almost a precedent set just for me. Once controlled nuclear fusion enters the military field, the power and range of nuclear submarines and nuclear aircraft carriers will be completely rewritten, and global navigation and long-range strikes will no longer be just ideas on paper. This technology can also be used to build nuclear power plants, providing a stable power supply for military bases. As for the vice ministerial level benefits, although there is no actual power, in a local setting, it already carries the weight of a vice provincial level official. The awards ceremony was scheduled for 8 p.m. that evening, and as usual, only a few elders were present. My identity had been placed in the National SSSS level classified file. The fewer people who knew, the safer. I was. Even Lin Hai didn't know. When I returned to the Zijing villa late at night, Mu Wanbing was already asleep. She had been busy with the group's reopening these past 2 days, and since I had informed her in advance, she wasn't worried, so I didn't disturb her. I went into the study alone and began to rethink the layout of Night Sky Island in my mind. Now that controlled nuclear fusion was in hand, Night Sky Island must have its own large-scale nuclear power plant. The island originally had a power station, but the cost of generating electricity was not low. In the future, with the need to produce batteries and expand the factory, the electricity consumption will only increase, and ordinary energy sources simply cannot support my plans. More importantly, nuclear power plants can also be used for military research. If laser weapons can be developed in the future, the defense system of Night Sky Island will be upgraded again, truly turning it into my overseas fortress. In Kaya State to the north, I originally had my eye on the Lapida hydropower station. It is a vital power source for Kaya, firmly controlled by the Kaya military, and forcibly seizing it would come at a great cost. If the fighting results in mutual destruction, the Kaya National Army, KMPP, might seize the opportunity to profit. Instead of outright robbery, they might as well change their approach and shift from plunder to competition. I have decided to first build nuclear power plants around Kaya State to supply electricity to Kaya State and even the entire North Shore, directly seizing the electricity market and gradually controlling the North Shore's power lifeline. The original third step of the plan was to develop hydroelectric power stations and then, in conjunction with the Lapida hydroelectric station, control more than half of the region's hydroelectric resources. Now that controlled nuclear fusion has been achieved, my course of action must be adjusted. We still want the Lapida hydroelectric power station, but not now. We'll wait until the Night Air Force is strong enough to take it all in one go. Or we'll wait until the local armed forces seize it first, then send someone to reap the rewards. Or we'll wait until it's been losing money for a long time and is sold off by the Myanmar government. In short, now is not a good time to take action. Ultimately, I've acquired more important technology and have a more reliable and ruthless method. After spending 2 more days in Kyoto, Mu Wanbing and I returned to Jiangxing. I'll spend more time with my family during this period, and after the Lunar New Year, I'll return to Night Sky Island. Night Sky Island is no longer the desolate island it once was. Midterm construction is complete, and finishing touches are underway. Once the construction teams gradually leave, it will truly come under my control. Meanwhile, the Jiang Group's operations were fully expanded. After the new year, Longshan International Group added another 10 billion yuan to its investment in Taiwan, instantly becoming the largest investor in the area. Our industries have spread to many places in the north, central and southern parts of the bay, Dongxiong, Lianhua and Taolin, and most of them are in the field of people's livelihood, quietly affecting the clothing, food, housing, and transportation of the people in the bay. Fu Qinning has also become a rising star in Taiwan's business world. But the Taiwanese leaders haven't realized that behind Longshan International Group, the real person standing is Jiang Chun. In addition, I also sent inspection teams to several African countries, including Uganda, Kenya, Mozambique, and Zambia. The initial investment was several billion yuan, which served as an appetizer. Fu Qinning was always worried about the business in Black Africa, but I knew that Longshan International Group had to go global, and this step had to be taken sooner or later. Just before I was about to leave China, I convened another meeting of the Jiang Group's top executives, and even Fu Qinning rushed back from Taiwan. I looked at everyone and said directly, "Everyone has performed well recently, especially Longshan International Group, which has expanded rapidly, but we must seek progress while maintaining stability and avoid all potential risks. The Jiang Group is too conspicuous right now. Being number one in market value doesn't mean being invincible. China is full of hidden talents, and there are some forces lurking behind the scenes that we can't easily provoke for the time being. My voice turned serious. Caution does not mean fear. Anyone who dares to lay a hand on the Jiang Group must be dealt a fatal blow. All the senior executives sat up straight. I knew this was my last word before I left. For a long time to come, the Jiang Group would have to rely on them. Finally, I turned my gaze to Fu Qinning. The Jiang Group's top priority is to cooperate with the country to bring Taiwan home as soon as possible. We are willing to pay any price for this. Fu Qinning's eyes welled up with tears. He stood up and said in a deep voice, "Please rest assured, Chairman Jiang, I guarantee that I will complete this glorious and arduous task. Bringing Taiwan home has been the wish of generations. Perhaps it can truly be realized in our generation. Time flies, and it's already the 30th day of the first lunar month. Tomorrow I'll be setting off back to Night Sky Island." The Jiang and Mu families gathered again to see me off. I know in my heart that this departure will mean at least a year before I can return. That night, Mu Wanbing was unusually proactive, as if she wanted to use up all the longing she had accumulated over the past year. I cooperated fully, but even the strongest body can't withstand it, and in the end, I could only fall into a deep sleep. When I opened my eyes again, I had already set foot on Night Sky Island. Everything here was still tense and orderly, like a machine that never stopped running, and I was back in the Supreme Command Center, with the real battlefield once again before my eyes. I had just sat down when Xie Shuyun, the chairwoman of HC Investment Group and the head of the logistics department of the Dark Knight Army, rushed over to report. During my absence this month, she was primarily in charge of the group and the Dark Knight Army, assisted by Tang Xing, Wang Ming, and others, and nothing went wrong. Xie Shuyun congratulated me on my marriage first, and I waved for her to sit down. There's no need for formalities among family. What I'm most concerned about right now is how far Night Sky Island has progressed in the past month. She opened her notebook and first reported to HC Investment Group. All departments had resumed work after the Spring Festival, and business was progressing smoothly. The investment department had established more than a dozen inspection teams, preparing to travel to Southeast Asia, Japan, and the United States. These teams will screen projects on site before assigning them to various branch offices for execution. The group plans to invest at least 300 billion yuan within 2 months, starting with livelihood projects and directly impacting the daily lives of local people. Meanwhile, the Securities Center raised hundreds of billions of yuan, splitting it into hundreds of accounts, preparing to operate in several major global stock markets. This was spearheaded by Tang Xing. Hearing this, I knew the plan had truly begun. Xie Shuyun asked me if I had any instructions. I hesitated for a moment and then told her directly that I had recently made a breakthrough in controlled nuclear fusion technology and was preparing to build a super-nuclear power plant on Night Sky Island. Night Sky Island is developing too rapidly, and its future electricity consumption will be like a bottomless pit. The existing power plants won't last long, and the supernuclear power plant must be built as soon as possible. It will become the energy core of Night Sky Island for the next few years. Xie Shuyun paused for a few seconds, clearly stunned by the statement, but she quickly regained her composure and continued taking notes. I then reminded her that the Jiang Group would also simultaneously launch an overseas investment plan, with Longchun International Group as the executor. HC can cooperate with Longchun, but they must maintain a distance. On the surface, the two are independent international investment groups, but they are both affiliated with the Jiang family's network, and this must not be discovered by outsiders. I asked her to tell Fu Qinning that Longchun is currently keeping an eye on Taiwan and the African continent, and there won't be any business conflicts in the short term. In the future, to cover up their relationship, the two sides can compete appropriately. Losing some profits is okay, but the connection must be kept completely hidden. After Xie Shuyun finished taking notes, she continued to report on the Dark Knight Army. No new recruits had been sent recently. The training results of each unit were obvious. The arsenal had produced another batch of new weapons, and the military industrial capacity of Night Sky Island was rapidly taking shape. This batch of weapons includes 1,500 TK-1 automatic rifles, 300 TS-1 pistols, 70 terabytes 1 sniper rifles, more than 400,000 rounds of ammunition, as well as grenades and various types of bombs. She planned to send most of them to Daegu to sustain frontline supplies and to re-equip the 10 infantry battalions reorganized there. The situation in Daegu was unstable. Every piece of equipment there meant potentially fewer deaths. Meanwhile, 40 Tianfu-1 military off-road vehicles and 15 Tianfu-1 light armored vehicles will also be sent to Daegu. Yekong Island will only keep 3 armored vehicles for itself, but I did not object. The front line needs them more than the island. Si Shuyun added that medium-sized armored vehicles are under development and are expected to be finalized and tested in 2 months. Armed helicopters made their first test flight in early March, but shipbuilding plants have yet to produce any results. After listening, I immediately gave the order. First, 70% of the weapons and equipment from the arsenal should be sent to Daegu and handed over to Nye Gang and his men. The front line cannot be cut off from firepower, and soldiers cannot be made to risk their lives to make up for the equipment gap. Second, establish research and development awards. For any new weapon or equipment designed, a research grant of 100 million to 1 billion yuan will be awarded, and each member of the project team will receive a bonus of at least 500,000 yuan. I want all researchers to know that research results can be exchanged for real money. Third, allocate 3 billion to the arsenal to expand production capacity, especially the armored vehicle production line, aiming to double its size. Fourth, allocate 2 billion to the helicopter project team to expedite test flights. Fifth, allocate 5 billion to the shipbuilding project team. Night Sky Island must have its own warships. If it wants to gain a foothold in the future, it must firmly hold control of the sea. 2 days later, in the Dark Knight Army's highest command conference room, a giant screen was connected to the Daegu military base. I sat in the main seat, with logistics personnel and officers on both sides, and everyone's eyes were fixed on the screen. On the screen, Nye Gang reported to me on the situation on the Kaya front. Loikyu and Poruk have already fallen into our hands, and the next step was originally to take over Daimosu Township, which is the second largest township in Kaya and a major transportation hub. Daimosu has a population of less than 100,000 and is densely mountainous and hilly. The army has the 102nd Infantry Battalion and the 427th Light Infantry Battalion there, with a permanent garrison of more than 600 troops, controlling the dam and the Western Passage. In the town center, city hall, police station, and hospital area, there are over 400 soldiers patrolling and guarding the main roads. This means the total strength of the soldiers in Daimosu is approximately 1,000, and their equipment is relatively complete. The real problem lies with the local Kaya ethnic armed groups. The KNDF, KNPP, PDF, KGZ, and Wolfpack are scattered throughout the mountains, suburbs, and along the highways, with a total strength of nearly 900 men. These people may not have strong direct firepower, but they excel at harassment, ambushes, road blasting, and communication disruption. If they are allowed to hold the line, Daimosu will become a quagmire, making it difficult for anyone to enter. Nye Gang dared to target Daimosu because the Daegu base housed 2 infantry battalions and a special operations company of the Dark Knight Army, totaling nearly 700 elite troops. Add to that 10 local infantry battalions, more than 1,200 men. That was his confidence. After listening to the report, I only said 4 words: approve the operation. The meeting room fell silent instantly. Everyone understood that the next round of fighting in Kaya State had officially begun. I then ordered the formation of the Daegu Guard Brigade, selecting the brigade commander and deputy brigade commander from among 10 battalion commanders, who were required to be absolutely loyal. The Guard Brigade was placed under the command of the Daegu military base, with Lei Ning concurrently serving as special commander. I was well aware that local troops were usable, but not entirely reliable. That's why I put Lei Ning in charge, giving him real control over the military direction of the Guard Brigade, while I delegated the day-to-day affairs of the 1st Battalion to his deputy. Then I issued a second order: select loyal and capable people from the Guard Brigade, recruit them into the Night Army, form the 6th Infantry Battalion, and give them the same treatment as other Night Army soldiers. The Night Army currently only has 5 infantry battalions, which is far from enough to complete my plan. Star Security has limited personnel, so if we want to expand, we must recruit capable people locally. Nia Gang immediately accepted the order. The year was over, and the previously halted plans should be pushed forward again. The Battle of Daimosu was the first touchstone after the expansion of the army. 10 days later, the Legu military base received another batch of military supplies. Nia Gang summoned all troops and officially announced the establishment of the Legu Guard Brigade, with Wen Ming as brigade commander, Lei Suo as deputy brigade commander, and Mu Sai as chief of staff. Lei Ning was appointed as special commander. All the officers knew in their hearts that Wen Ming held the nominal power, while Lei Ning held the real power. The true military commander of the Guard Brigade was actually Lei Ning. All 10 battalions were incorporated into the Guard Brigade, and the regimental-level organizational structure was abolished. Immediately afterwards, the 6th Infantry Battalion was also formally established, with Yuan Hu, the deputy battalion commander of the 2nd Battalion, serving as its commander. The first batch of 50 highly loyal and well-trained guardsmen were assigned to the 6th Battalion. This news excited all the guardsmen. Everyone wanted to become a true member of the Night Army. After the appointments were made, Nia Gang called the officers into the conference room and directly deployed Operation Daimosu. The 6th Battalion and the 8th, 9th, and 10th Battalions of the Guard Brigade remained at the base, while all other units participated in the operation. Yuan Hu looked somewhat dejected, but he also understood that the 6th Brigade had just been established and its personnel and organization were not yet complete, so it was impossible to immediately deploy it to the battlefield. It could only stay at the base to stabilize the rear. Nia Gang ordered all units to mobilize immediately after the meeting and distribute ammunition. The Special Operations Squadron would infiltrate Daimosu first, and the 2nd Infantry Battalion would depart tonight to first control Nanmaikong and open up the communication line from Legu to Daimosu. It's only 20 kilometers from Legu to Daimosu, but you have to go through South Mekong in between. There's no way around it. That place has become a battlefield that the Mongol army and the Kaya militia have been fighting over repeatedly, and it's a thorn in our side that we must remove first. The garrison at Nanmaikong was small, consisting of about 150 men from the 427th Light Infantry Battalion and over 400 men from various units of the Kyrgyz armed forces. The situation appeared chaotic, but it was actually perfect for a surprise attack by the Night Army. That night, the 2nd Infantry Battalion arrived at Nam Mekong. The Special Operations Squadron had sent back intelligence ahead of time, and the troops only had a short rest before launching a surprise attack on the 1st KNDF Battalion under cover of night. The silent night was instantly torn apart by gunfire. The KNDF 1st Battalion was caught completely off guard and stunned on the spot. The other armed forces around them were also thrown into chaos, with no one knowing where this suddenly appearing force had come from. The 427th Light Infantry Battalion was equally bewildered, initially mistaking it for an internal conflict within the Kyrgyz armed forces. A unit of the Daimosu Brigade was attempting to reinforce the 1st Battalion when it was intercepted by the 3rd Company of the 2nd Infantry Battalion. The battle ended completely at the first light of dawn. The 2nd Infantry Battalion annihilated the KNDF 1st Battalion and part of the Daimosu Brigade, killing over 100 enemy soldiers and capturing fewer than 100. Our side suffered 7 dead and 23 wounded, some lightly and some seriously. Another great victory. The 1st Infantry Battalion swiftly captured the town of Nanmaikong. By the time the news reached me, Nia Gang had already made arrangements for the aftermath. The 10th Battalion was stationed in the town, and all prisoners were taken to the Legu military base. The wounded were sent to Legu Military Hospital, and the 7 brothers who sacrificed their lives would be sent back to China by special personnel. My heart was heavy. War never only brings victory, but also leaves living people on the battlefield. I don't want to see any of my brothers fall, but this is war. All I can do is minimize casualties, ensure their families receive the best possible care, and prevent my brothers from shedding blood in vain. After the capture of Nan Mekong, the atmosphere in Daimosu town instantly became tense. Both the military and the Kayad nation forces panicked, with large numbers of troops gathering in the surrounding areas and making numerous calls for help. But reinforcements don't arrive overnight. Nie Gang wouldn't give them any breathing room. He immediately ordered all units to advance according to the original plan and launch a general offensive against Daimosu. The 1st and 2nd Infantry Battalions were tasked with the main attack, while the Special Operations Company infiltrated behind enemy lines to harass command and firing positions. Several battalions of the Guard Brigade were responsible for coordinating the blockade. As soon as the battle began, the enemy line started to collapse. 2 hours later, the Kaya nationalist forces were gradually broken through, with over 400 surrendering, over 200 killed, and over 300 wounded sent to hospitals. The 102nd Infantry Battalion and the 427th Light Infantry Battalion were also scattered, with only a few escaping from Daimosu. 3 hours later, we took control of the Nado Dam, the town center, the city hall, the police station, and the hospital. 8 hours later, the entire town of Daimosu was completely under the control of the Night Army. Nie Gang ordered the Guard Brigade to clear the battlefield, and the Dark Knight Army to immediately rest while remaining on alert. He knew very well that the Mion Army and the Kia allied forces would never swallow this defeat after losing 3 towns in succession. Meanwhile, in the 7th Military Operations Command of the Army, Bed's face was terribly grim. The loss of Legu had already earned him a severe reprimand from his superiors, and now that Nanmaikong had also run into trouble, the pressure on him was almost unbearable. When the adjutant reported that the 427th Light Infantry Battalion requested reinforcements, Bed immediately realized something was wrong. South Mekong was a key transportation hub connecting Regu and Daimosu. If the enemy took it, their real target was most likely Daimosu. He rushed to the map and ordered the 102nd Infantry Battalion to strengthen its defenses, and also dispatched the 134th, 108th, and 531st Infantry Battalions to reinforce Daimosu. He knew that if Daimosu fell again, he might be dismissed from his post or even court-martialed. What he didn't know was that his orders came too late. We had already captured Daimosu, and the 4 battalions he could mobilize were essentially crashing into a new battlefield. Meanwhile, in their mountain stronghold in Damoso, the KMPP headquarters was equally oppressed. Recent battles had resulted in heavy losses, especially the KMPP, whose forces had been reduced by over 2,000 men, including the clearing out of Legu. Commander-in-Chief Anka looked grim. They could have relied on the transportation lines to fight off the enemy, but now that Legu and Nanmaikong had been lost one after another, they could only retreat to the mountains and rural areas. The subordinates judged that the enemy forces would definitely retaliate, because Bed could not afford the consequences of losing Daimosu again. Someone suggested that while the enemy forces were engaged with this mysterious force, they should attack from the flank and lay an ambush. Anka remained silent for a long time. They still hadn't figured out our situation, not even how many people we had, yet we seemed to see them clearly. This intelligence gap had already put them at a disadvantage. But an opportunity also lies before us. If the enemy forces launch a large-scale attack on us, the Kyrgyz alliance can take advantage of the chaos to strike, both weakening the enemy forces and severely damaging us, and even recapturing key towns. Anka asked how many troops could be urgently assembled. His subordinate replied, at least 8 battalions. His eyes turned cold, and he immediately ordered 3 infantry battalions to harass Nanmaikong and recapture the town while our rear was under pressure. The remaining 5 infantry battalions will quietly advance into the vicinity of Daimosu. Once they discover that we are engaged in combat with the enemy forces, they will immediately harass and launch a blitzkrieg. If the opportunity arises, they will directly seize the town of Daimosu. They had a brilliant plan. A frontal assault on the enemy forces, followed by a sneak attack from the rear by the Kyrgyz alliance. It would be a classic case of the snipe and the clam fighting, while the fisherman reaps the benefits. Chapter 236 Who is the Hunter? In the temporary military command post in Nanmaikong town, Nie Gang and his men were discussing the next steps in the operation. Gung Dahai sent back intelligence that 4 battalions of the front army were already pressing down on Daimosu. With formidable firepower, and a frontal assault would inevitably result in bloodshed. To make matters worse, the Kyrgyz allied forces also mobilized, with 8 battalions simultaneously gathering. 3 battalions advanced towards South Mekon, while 5 battalions supported Daimosu. The Night Army, seemingly having just captured a city, was now being targeted by 2 opposing forces. The faces of the newly reorganized Guard Brigade commanders were grim. They had surrendered to the Night Army, and if they were defeated and fell back into the hands of the Face Army or the Kyrgyz alliance, they dared not even imagine their fate. But they also knew that the Night Army was well-equipped, ruthless in combat, and well-paid. If they fled in the face of battle and the Night Army won, they would have no chance of survival either. Retreating meant certain death, while charging forward offered a chance. The problem is the huge disparity in troop strength. The main force of the Night Army, plus the Special Operations Squadron, at most, has less than 800 men, while the opposing side has 12 battalions with nearly 4,000 men. It's 5 against 1, and they seem like a tough nut to crack. If you include the 7 battalions of the Guard Brigade, the 2 sides are barely evenly matched. It was for this reason that a battalion commander who came from the Kyrgyz Allied forces stepped forward and requested to lead his troops to hold off the Kyrgyz Allied forces. Once the first person spoke up, the other battalion commanders followed suit. They knew this wasn't just empty talk about loyalty. It was a matter of risking their lives for their future. The Dark Night Army had given them a livelihood and their families hope. After a moment of silence, Nyegang finally approved the order. The 1st, 3rd, and 7th battalions were to hold South Mekong and block the Kyrgyz Allied forces. The 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 6th battalions were to follow the main force in attacking Daimosu. Gung Dahai led a special operations squadron to infiltrate Daimosu's rear, specifically to disrupt enemy command. Lei Ning led the 1st Infantry Battalion to circle around to the rear of the Kyrgyz Allied forces, launching a pincer attack and annihilating the invading enemy. Fu Peng led the 2nd Infantry Battalion to control the Naoto Dam fortress, leaving 1 company to guard the dam, while the other 2 companies cut off the retreat route of the Daimosu army. Nyegang's meaning was clear. This battle was not about repelling, but about annihilating them. On Night Sky Island, after reviewing the battle plan presented by Nyegang, I understood that the situation in Kaya State had reached a critical juncture. Winning this battle would allow the Dark Night Army to truly establish a foothold. I immediately instructed Fu Ning to notify HC Investment Department to begin drafting the Kaya State investment plan. Military victory can only provide temporary relief. To truly solidify this region, we must ensure the locals' dependence on us. Guns can seize territory, but they cannot make people truly submit. Only by controlling their food, employment, transportation, and energy will they trust and rely on us. I am well aware that the military base is merely a fulcrum. To control the entire Golden Triangle frontier, Kaya State must be developed into a model. Military intervention followed by economic development. This is the true hunter's method. 2 days later, Nyegang's battle report arrived in my hands. The Dark Night Army defeated the Face Army and the Kia Allied Army, killing more than 700 enemy soldiers, capturing more than 3,000, and completely controlling the Daimosu town area by noon. But the cost was equally heavy. 218 of our own men were killed and 463 were wounded. 3 members of the Special Operations Squadron were killed, 12 members of the 1st Battalion were killed, and 14 members of the 2nd Battalion were killed. Most of the remaining casualties came from the Guard Brigade. Looking at the list, my heart sank. Those weren't just cold numbers. They were lives, especially those of the Dark Night Army brothers, all handpicked. I immediately telegraphed Nyegang that the treatment of the wounded and killed soldiers of the Guard Brigade must be the same as that of the Dark Night Army. I don't lack money, but people's hearts are the most valuable. They are willing to guard our territory for us, so we must let them see a return. Next, I ordered the consolidation of the 3 towns of Legu, Nanmaikong, and Daimosu to prevent the infiltration of hostile forces. Military control was implemented in all 3 areas, with the towns governed by the Do figurines and supervised by the Dark Night Army. I added a few more arrangements tailored to the local situation. All the orders had only one purpose: to stabilize order, eliminate potential threats, and thoroughly digest the territory that had just been captured. A week later, the HC Investment Group's inspection team set off for 3 towns. They aimed to gain a thorough understanding of the situation, develop investment plans, revitalize the local economy, and also inspect the construction of a nuclear power plant. 6 months later, Nye Gang, with his Dark Knight army, had completely taken control of the entire Kai state. At this point, my roots in the north were truly firmly established. The Lega nuclear power plant is under construction and is expected to be operational in 3 years. Once it's up and running, a steady stream of electricity will flow to various parts of Myeongdong, and then I will have control over Myeongdong's power supply lifeline. The power supply to the Lapita hydroelectric power station has also fallen under the control of the Night Army. If I were to cut off the external supply with a single word, the entire north face would tremble. But now is not the time to turn against them. Making stable profits is more worthwhile than rushing to overturn the table. The hydroelectric power station alone generates nearly 500,000 rupees in revenue daily, amounting to 180 million rupees annually. While this amount may not seem like a large sum to HC Investment Group, it signifies that Kai Estate has begun to recover its economic vitality. I had HC Investment Group establish a branch in Kai Estate, investing 50 billion rupees directly in road construction, school building, healthcare improvements, hydroelectric power plant development, and nuclear power plant construction. My goal wasn't simply to seize territory, but to make this my base of operations. As long as people can have enough to eat and their lives are better than before, who would be willing to risk their lives to fight a war? With the commencement of numerous projects, the indigenous residents found jobs, and people from other states and regions began to flock to Kai Estate. In just 6 months, the population of Kai Estate increased from 300,000 to 500,000. The original Do figurine troops were also expanded into 2 guard brigades, each with 12 battalions, totaling nearly 5,000 men, for a total of 10,000 men. Police officers have been fully deployed to all towns, with at least 300 in ordinary towns, 500 in Daimosu, and over 1,000 in the capital, Daegu. With HC branch offices and the Dark Knight Army headquarters located there, security must be as impenetrable as an ironclad fortress. With a stronger police force, the crime rate plummeted. But what truly brings stability to Kai Estate isn't just guns and uniforms, but money. Everyone's busy making money. Who has the time to rob or kill? At the same time, Longshan International Investment Group also established a presence on the island of Taiwan. Fu Kining mobilized massive amounts of capital to penetrate into Taiwan's livelihood sectors, with total investments exceeding 300 billion yuan. He also won over a group of Taiwanese politicians who shared a common trait. They all firmly believed themselves to be Chinese. Centered around Fu Kining, a new force began to emerge on the island of Taiwan. Longshan Investments industries are mostly labor-intensive. Profits aren't high, but they provide hundreds of thousands of jobs, impacting tens of thousands of families. More importantly, their products have already entered countless households. Recently, Fu Kining set his sights on a major project, acquiring a stake in TSMC, Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation. TSMC is the world's largest and most technologically advanced chip foundry, and even though the Jiang Group's 2nm chips have swept the domestic market, its position hasn't completely collapsed. TSMC in Taiwan still holds over 50% of the market share, while the Jiang Group has barely squeezed into the 20% mark. Even so, the chip business generates hundreds of billions in profit annually. The lucrative nature of this sector is self-evident. Taiwan's TSMC has a total market capitalization exceeding $1 trillion, equivalent to over 11 trillion Chinese yuan. It is enormous, with a complex shareholding structure. Its largest single shareholder is U.S. Capital, holding approximately 20% of the shares. If the Jiang Group hadn't cracked the chip technology, TSMC would still be the undisputed champion. But things are different now. My chips have caught up, and it's only a matter of time before we dethrone them in the next 2 or 3 years. This is why the shareholders of Taiwan TSMC began to waver. Fu Kining seized the opportunity, personally drafted a report, and submitted the investment plan to the Jiang Group's advisory committee, while simultaneously reporting it to the Night Sky Island Supreme Command. I didn't reject his plan. On the contrary, I strongly supported it. If we can acquire a stake in TSMC, our influence in Taiwan will increase. If one day we can gain controlling interest, it will be equivalent to holding a vital economic lifeline in Taiwan. Anyone who misbehaves can be moved to another location to continue operating. At that point, some people won't even have a place to cry, even if they want to. Taiwan TSMC is too big, with a market value of 11 trillion, nearly half of the Jiang Group. If we were to force a takeover, including the premium, we would need at least 12 trillion in cash flow. Even I wouldn't touch something of that scale. Therefore, we can only proceed gradually. The advisory committee discussed the matter for nearly a week, and I also participated in several video conferences. In the end, it was decided to approve Fu Kinning's plan, with an initial allocation of 200 billion yuan and a subsequent continuous investment of 800 billion yuan. If trillions of dollars are moved, the Jiang Group's future development plans will have to be adjusted. But if this project succeeds, it will be a major event that benefits the country and its people. Even if there are some short-term losses, I will accept it. So, in the past 2 weeks, Fu Kinning began a frenzied acquisition of shares in Taiwan TSMC. The Jiang Group initially invested 200 billion yuan, plus several hundred billion yuan from Longshan International, and then used the group as collateral to borrow nearly 300 billion yuan from banks, bringing the total to 600 billion yuan, which he poured into the project. Ultimately, Longshan International acquired a 5% stake in Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company, TSMC, becoming its third largest shareholder and the largest individual shareholder. Longshan International's standing in Taiwan subsequently skyrocketed, with its market capitalization once approaching 2 trillion NT dollars. Star Capital Investment, HC Investment, Longshan International, Star Capital Asset Management, Star Capital Energy, Star Capital Finance, one after another, trillion-dollar conglomerates have taken shape under my leadership. Today, I have finally become a true founder of a powerful empire, possessing over 20 trillion in wealth, capable of influencing the global economy with a mere flick of my finger. As for me, I've lost track of how much money I actually have. To me, money is just a cold number. What truly matters is transforming those numbers into a force that can change the world. Today, the Jiang Group is based in China, while HC Investment Group and Longshan International Investment Group are expanding overseas. On the surface, they seem unrelated, but in reality, they are all under my control, and their industries have spread all over the world. The bigger the operation, the more obvious the problems become. The biggest shortage for overseas branches isn't money, but trustworthy people. While top-level management can be transferred from China with top-tier compensation and long-term overseas assignments, few are willing to go. I can only set the following principles. The top management must be predominantly Chinese, and core technical personnel must also be in the hands of our own people. The remaining positions will be filled by locals. As long as the money is right, there will be no shortage of workers. To prevent the overseas company from being sidelined, I introduced a 3-part management model. The chairman oversees the overall situation, the general manager manages operations, the finance director oversees finances, and the human resources director oversees personnel. The 3 parties keep an eye on each other. Whether a project can be invested in is decided by the general manager, who conducts a financial assessment of costs and returns before determining the amount of funding. Every penny is tracked, and if any discrepancies are found in the accounts, funding is immediately suspended and accountability is pursued. Employee transfers and promotions are the responsibility of the HR director. The general manager and finance director can only make recommendations, not final decisions. This system of checks and balances among the 3, with the chairman retaining ultimate control, ensures that the overseas company does not spiral out of control. That day, I convened the highest-level meeting on Night Sky Island. Xie Shuyun and others arrived early, while Nia Gang participated via video link. I tapped on the table and immediately had them report on the situation of HC Investment Group. Xie Shuyun stood in front of the projector, her tone decisive. In just 6 months, HC Investment Group's business had expanded by over 60%, entering markets in Southeast Asia, Japan, and the United States, with branch offices being established one after another. The group currently has a total market capitalization of 3.5 trillion yuan, with 120 billion yuan in liquid funds and projected annual profits exceeding 500 billion yuan. I nodded after listening. The results were good, but the liquid funds were still too low. I immediately approved the decision to allocate 10 billion yuan as half-year bonuses for the employees. The meeting room fell silent instantly, and everyone gasped. There were 216,000 HC employees, meaning each person would receive an average of over 40,000 yuan. This amount of money is not insignificant for many ordinary families. But I know very well that if I want people to work hard for me, I can't just make empty promises. I will give them every penny they are owed. Tang Xing then reported on his stock trading activities. In less than 6 months, he had amassed hundreds of billions of yuan from stock markets around the world. His methods were ruthless and his foresight accurate, but this had already attracted the attention of many international financial giants. I immediately told him to stop and temporarily halt his large-scale involvement in the stock market. Now is not the time to confront the global capitalist oligarchs head-on. It's one thing to withstand the pressure, but it's not worth suffering serious damage. Finally, I set them a new target. By the end of the year, HC Investment Group's market capitalization should exceed 5 trillion yuan, and its liquid assets should be at least 500 billion yuan. I don't care about the process, I only care about the results. Tang Xing's eyes lit up instantly. I glanced at him, but didn't say much. He understood what I meant. As long as he didn't ruin himself, how much he could make in the international market depended on his abilities. Next, it was Nie Gang's turn to report. In the video, he was even more tanned, wearing dark camouflage, looking like a drawn sword. He first gave a military salute, his voice steady and calm. Within 6 months, the Dark Army had taken control of Kaya and expanded to 5 infantry battalions. In addition to the 1st and 2nd battalions, the 6th, 7th, and 8th battalions were filled by selecting loyal locals. The Special Operations Squadron was expanded into a Special Operations Battalion, while the local armed forces were expanded to 2 guard brigades. Nie Gang's next plan was to seize Kayan State and control the border crossing between Mint Island and Sawadika State. Hearing the name Kayan State, my gaze darkened. Many may not be familiar with the name, but mention Temple Valley, and everyone will know what that place is. It's a place rife with deception, lies, and evil. It was like a black hole where the law couldn't reach, luring countless people in and draining them dry until they were drained of their last drop of blood. I stared at the screen, my voice low but filled with murderous intent. I ordered Nie Gang to immediately formulate a detailed battle plan, which is ready for implementation. At all costs, destroy that place filled with evil. Nie Gang straightened up and replied in a deep voice, "Understood."